Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Summer of Survivor. My name is Mike Bloom, and listen, we are looking ahead to the fall, the next season coming up. But today, we are going to be talking about many falls because a lot of these tribes had some downfalls in the game of Survivor. Today, we're throwing it back a little bit of outwit, outplay, outlist, a tier list of not just any Survivor tribes, but some of the biggest hot mess tribes in Survivor history. Of course, I'm not alone here. I'm joined each and every week by one of the co-hosts here on Summer of Survivor, Shannon Guss. Shannon, how are you?
I'm great. I'm glad that we're doing this because I feel like disaster tribes are such a big part of the conversation at the moment, right?
I do love that you started with, I'm glad we're doing this. That already passes the smell test of like, was this a good idea to do? If the co-host says this was a good idea.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm the one who had extreme agency in whether we did it. We came up with this idea together, and I'm glad we're doing this as part of that.
Absolutely. Well, I am very excited to bring in this third party. Of course, Rob is away for the week, but this person will very much rise to the occasion. Look, she kept a tennis ball on her head for 15 hours so she could handle the asylum where these people were raised in the form of these hot mess tribes. So excited to welcome you to the podcast, Mary Kwiatkowski.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. You know, I was just ranting before this podcast started about how I rarely get asked to be on fun things.
And today is no different.
I have been on a hot mess tribe once or twice myself, usually fake ones that don't actually exist. But like when we play sports like kickball and stuff, we do Brant Steele with my friends in order to see the kicking order and things like that. And I've been out first like multiple times.
Okay, wait.
In those.
God, we don't have a lot of time, but I need to like quickly pick into this. So you figure out like your batting order essentially by running a Brant Steele?
Yeah, of course. How else does anyone do it? Isn't that normal?
I think I've found someone that's ascended my obsession with said software in the form of Mary. That is incredible. That's like kind of shaking up the magic 8 ball to determine every decision you make on a daily basis.
Pretty much. I recommend. It's a fun way to make decisions for anything.
Well,
okay, we'll all do that. Mike, you have the magic 8 ball. I've got the bingo balls. Mary will do it through Brant Steele, and that's how all our decisions will be made.
Regardless of what the decision-making device might be, we have a lot of decisions to make today. So this is something that Rob and I did back during, God, I want to say it was maybe like the summer of 2022, where we did a series of podcasts where we did tier lists featuring various amount of Survivor topics. I believe actually you both were on editions of that podcast, and we're bringing it back today to talk about a very specialized subject in Survivor. Hot mess tribes across 46 seasons. Some tribes rise, some fall, some rise, then fall, some fall, then rise. It's a very broad definition of what makes a hot mess tribe, and it's something we're going to talk about today. I have cut out a selection of 20 tribes across Survivor history that we are going to be put into a tier list that is evaluated later on. But let's do sort of like a quick around the horn and get a general view of the criteria we're each kind of walking in with. Shannon, do you have a sense as to how you're going to be adjudicating what hot mess tribes beat out other ones?
I thought we were going to come up with that collectively because it is tough. We all have to have the same criteria, right? Otherwise, this will be a hot mess. And Mary,
would that not be appropriate?
It would be. I feel like, to me, this podcast is just testing for Mary if we are less or more painful. If like 2 hours with us is less or more painful than 8.5 hours with a ball on your head. Well, no, it wasn't. How much longer was it? It wasn't 8.5.
Like 15 hours.
15. Yeah, it was $850. That's why. Okay. Yeah. So that's, I think, like a good barometer. No, I feel like it's hard because a lot of the great hot mess tribes have like success. Like they have like a winner. They have, well, like they might, make it to the end. Some completely flame out. What's more hot messier? Are you a better hot mess tribe if you don't make it to the end at all? Are you a better hot mess tribe if you have success? Mary, tell me what I think.
So I think that like keeping in mind some of the stats from the situation helps. Like if you have a tribe where, let's just theoretically say that like 95% of your tribe doesn't make the merge, that's kind of a hot mess and a good thing to count for. But I think there is a difference between a hot mess tribe and just a very losing tribe, because
hot mess versus cute mess.
Yeah, because part of it is like you can be good, you can have a good well-placing tribe, but they don't get along. And it's like, okay, they work together in challenges, but nowhere else. And I think there's a lot of tribes like that are fun. I think sometimes a hot mess tribe is just, you know it when you see it. You know, when you're having discussions about coming to, you know, kill someone in their shitty apartment, kind of a hot mess situation. So I think sometimes, you know, when you see it, and I think that there will be at least a few that if we're like, I don't really remember this tribe, probably low on the hot mess scale.
Yeah, I think that's a really good criteria. I knew we'd work it out on the podcast because I do think we don't want to just be ranking the worst tribes in order of how bad they are.
Yeah.
Because that would be a different thing. And I do think, iconicness, big one. Okay, and then we'll think of more.
There's a je ne sais quoi, a je ne sais mess.
Yes, exactly.
A hot mess tribe that when you see it, you see it. And yeah, suffice to say, we're going to run the gamut here. That's the entire purpose of the list. Maybe they're not always going to be bangers, but that is the fact of the matter when it comes to this type of experiment. Let's just dive in, shall we? Now, listen, we have a long, storied history of hot mess tribes across Survivor, but let's arguably start with one of the first. Pagong.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one because, again, the waters were very much untested in Survivor Borneo, and Pagong was the one that, despite beating the rafting queen Kelly in one challenge, were the ones that were kind of typically lazing about in the water. While the Toggies were riding around on jet skis strategically, they were sitting in tubes drifting down the lazy river, and as a result, capsized. And so I think really where the hot mess element comes in is, of course, the post-merge portion where the Toggy 4 in particular are able to get a leg up. Of course, the infamous 4-1-1-1-1-1-1 vote, and then subsequently never really getting on the same page to allow them all to get taken out. So before we get into the ranking and rating proper, Shannon, any spare thoughts about Pagong?
I do think that the tribes should gain points in the tier list if they become a verb. Like the fact that it's like so historic decades on where we say like it's a pagonging, that's pretty bad. Like that legacy is very unfortunate. There's probably only one other tribe. Oh, I guess like the intentional matching, that's going to be important.
Yeah.
Ulonging, I think, is a bit of a thing, but pagonging, that's like really in the dictionary of Survivor for being completely destroyed post-merge, which was really on them. You know, they were like, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe because there wasn't a blueprint, but some of it should have been pretty common sense, I think, that what was happening, like right in front of their eyes. So for me, they'll probably be up pretty high because by the one criteria I already have, which is they're iconic, yes. And do we have more criteria? They're memorable. I guess that's pretty similar to iconic. Does anyone have any more criteria?
Well, so I think some of it is, I'm trying to think of how to quantify this.
You're really a numbers person. You're speaking Shannon's language today.
Which I love.
Yes.
Thank you, Mary. Yes.
So I think some of it is how like goofy is not exactly the right word, but how much were they fighting and arguing? How well did they get along? And I would say when it comes to Pagong, like they were okay. They had a core, they had some ability to stick together, but they did not have that strategic mindset to go through the game. So they were kind of all these moving pieces, kind of being a little more laissez-faire, which made to their credit, they didn't know that the other tribe was going to lock up and form alliances.
But once it was clearly happening in front of their faces, I think at that point,
yes,
it should have been obvious. Like beforehand, okay, fair. They didn't invent it first, and it seems obvious to us now, but was difficult at the time. But I feel like they should have known once it was clearly happening.
And I think it has to be mentioned that, you know, the first 5 votes of the season, or really you could count the first 6, went back and forth. Toggy Pagong. And then we have 5 more Pagongs in a row after that other one. The highest placement a Pagong member gets is 6th. So
but the only person to chart on the box office so far from Pagong as well.
Should that be factored into this conversation, Mike?
Maybe it should. Maybe how memorable each player is, because how much are we looking at it individually? Because I feel like most people could name like every member of Pagong.
Well, yeah. Let's move this discussion over as we get into the tier list as well. So just to remind people what we're working with, again, this is something that I cribbed from when we did this with our play out list. We have 4 tiers that we're working with. Top of the line, worth playing for. The best of the best, the hottest messes of the hottest mess. Next tier, my life is fine. Pretty good to okay on the messiness scale. Next tier down, ain't no Hershey bar. It's okay. It's fine to maybe not so great. And then finally, that bottom wretched tier. Forget you, go home, goodbye. To perhaps represent one of the hot, messiest seasons in the form of Gabon. I would at least put Pagong, like my starting bid on Pagong would be in either my life is fine or like a low end worth playing for.
Yeah.
Wait, okay, sorry. Just to recap this. Messiest is going up top.
Yes,
It's
we
very
are not,
hard, yes, because
It's confusing.
they gain it's
we
gotta turn
love
our heads
negative
around.
qualities on this
They
podcast.
gain points, so they gain points for bad things and they lose
Right.
points for good things. So it's like, oh, they kind of got on. Now you lose points.
Yeah,
That's so it's
a little too kumbaya. That's gonna knock you down, baby.
I feel like I want it low on worth playing for at the moment because I feel like they set the blueprint for hot mess tribes. They're our ancestors.
Wow,
We
their
should really
bones
honor
are
that.
turning to dust as they hear this.
Yeah, well, anyway, let's put them in for me worth playing for. Let's
Yeah.
not touch that one.
I
Yeah.
could see it either being a very, very low worth playing for or the very top of my life is
Yeah.
fine. Only because I think that we've got some other ones where just the personalities are a little more kooky. These people, I give them they're lowered down based on the fact that they get sort of a pass for being the first season and not really knowing what they should have been doing. Once
Mhm.
we get into, the further seasons and they at least know what they should be doing in the game, that's when they got no more credit.
Yeah,
Right.
so okay, another criteria is so getting on, which they kind of do. Well, not getting on is the criteria, and then failing spectacularly. I think should probably be up there, and they did.
Yeah, it is one of the more like iconic downfalls of a group. We'll certainly talk about that there are some tribes that are a little less memorable, despite the fact that maybe statistically or narratively their tribe ended up falling apart. Pagong is probably the strongest from a story perspective out of this entire group, considering that there was no pulling up out of the nosedive. Once they were done, they were pretty much done all in a row. So we'll see how far that carries it. But for right now, it's going to be in at the top tier. Let's go from old school to a little more new school, not new era, but this is a really interesting case because we have technically two tribes we could feasibly talk about here. Let's go to Survivor Edge of Extinction. And so we have Manu, which is the David Wright, Kelly Wentworth, Reem, Rick Devens, Chris, etc. tribe. And then that ends up winnowing down at the swap to Lesu, which was 5 people from Manu. So out of all this chaos where they go to tribal council in the first 3 episodes, they're granted this momentary respite of, great, it's a swap, there's brand new faces. Nope, we still have maybe some of the 5 of the most chaotic people in this group remaining on the same beach together. Mary, give me your thoughts about the 9-some turn 5-some in these two tribes.
Yeah, this one's interesting because I would say if, it was sight unseen when I was thinking up hot mess tribes, this one did not come to mind. But when you look at the picture and you remember the people, wow, yeah. It's off to such a great start with Reem, obviously. Can't forget Wendy as well. So I'd say that I'd even lean a little bit more towards it being a hot mess towards the beginning. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we've got War Dog too, and then of course, what is messier than someone getting voted out early in the game only to win? So
I would tell you one thing messier: someone who gets voted out only after them, only to come back and nearly win and get defeated by the guy who won, who also got voted out.
Also that. Yeah, this is interesting. I think I have a really hard time with memorability on this one because it's not one that's going to pop instantly for me, but I'd probably put it in maybe that second tier just looking at the pick people in it.
Yeah, what do you think, Shannon?
I hadn't immediately thought of it either, but this is why you're the foremost Survivor expert, Mike. Because when you look at it, a couple of things stand out. Firstly, the portmanteau of the names is Mesu. Speaks for itself.
True. Very
There
good.
we go.
Very good.
It was destined. I think there's a few really funny things here. Yes, the fact that the winner played a few days and is on this tribe. The fact that they couldn't get away from it and they were like so excited to, and then they swapped into the exact same iteration. Like I remember always saying that Devon's was like anti-swap screwed. Because he assumed that he would get out of the situation, so like the votes were fine.
He was kind of like tribe gerrymandered instead, where they just kind of redrew the districts where it was now only the 5 of them.
That's what everyone loves at this time of the morning. Political jokes. Explain gerrymandering to me. No. So, and like, look, Big Wendy, Keith, Reem, it's all kinds of there. War Dog. Yeah, but it's not that memorable, but it is a funny story when you think about it.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because the narrative of Edge of Extinction is so all over the place. But like, also remember, there was a period of time in the middle of this game where everyone who was left on Manu, like moving into the swap tribe or the merge tribe, all went after each other. There's that odd series of events where like Kelly goes, then David goes, then War Dog goes because they're all targeting each other. You know, they were going after Rick and David towards the beginning as well. So it also wasn't even a thing where, okay, they went through the trenches, but once they reached the merge, they all solidify and move forward. Like some other tribes we're going to talk about, they kind of just kept at it throughout to the point where we have manu on manu violence as they went mano a mano in the form of Chris and Rick against each other.
And yet we get the winner, but also we get the winner in this way. So I don't know if it should win or lose points because, again, my brain is broken on this, but because it's from Edge of Extinction, should it lose points because it's Edge of Extinction? Should it gain points? Because what is a bigger hot mess than Edge of Extinction just as a concept and as a season?
I'm trying to refresh my memory. How well did any individual people get along? Because I feel like you had Kelly and Lauren and you had Rick and the other guy.
I mean, I was Rick and Dave. I mean, there was. I mean, they were
literally the 2 people in this tribe who I have family members with the same name, and I couldn't think of it.
I thought you were going to be like the returnee.
Well,
very
also
well.
that. Also,
there's been a lot of people. That would be the one that would escape me from it.
Well, I know they were. I mean, they were targeting each other pretty much from the beginning. Like there was an attempted coup on the returnees, and there was even that point during the pilots and passengers tribal council where like Kelly and David are like, "Let's put our guns down. We're targeting each other right now." Like again, they never felt like a truly unified block. Now there was certainly not as much negativity as some of the other tribes will get into, but there was certainly some tension, I would say, between all these various factions.
Well, also when you compare it to the other tribe that had the whole kumbaya aspect, I feel like by comparison, it was not as much of a love tribe.
Yeah, so I would probably put it right now in My Life is Fine. I think memorability on paper would knock it down to Ain't No Hershey Bar, but I do think if you take a little bit more of a microscopic look at it, that there are a lot of messy things in there to put it in that tier.
It's like a fine wine. No, I don't know if that's true. I don't really drink wine, but do you know what it has? It has the factor, like the, oh yeah, that was funny. That is interesting. Like all the details are there. They wouldn't have come to mind immediately, but it's like a niche pick where you think, wow, they did get a winner and an almost winner who both got voted out. That's kind of impressive. That's kind of messy. That's kind of messu, which would be their portmanteau. So it's up there. I think it's up there in My Life is Fine.
Yeah, you good with that, Mary?
I'm good with that.
All right. Well, let us move into our first of many new era hot mess tribes because we're going with 3 tribes every season, and it sometimes becomes a habit that one tribe just keeps on losing. And for Survivor 41, that was UA. That was the Green Tribe. This was the Ricard and Shan tribe, JD, Brad, Jeannie, Sarah. A group that wins, I believe, like 1 immunity challenge technically throughout the entirety of its run, and then ends up kind of emerging with a pseudo Matt Singh pair in Shan and Ricard, who unfortunately do not replicate their success.
Yeah, they don't. They're not maxing. Can we just point out Minnows in the chat who says, I love moments like this where I get to learn about seasons I will never watch when we talked about Edge of Extinction.
Minnows, watch this season.
No, this was about Edge of Extinction. Don't watch it. It could have been an email. Watch the finale. That's all that mattered. Okay. And also the Mesu, apparently, the combined name that I'm now using, were apparently really fun and interesting. But don't make that, don't think that that's what the season really was. Because anyway, what were we saying?
Well, when it comes to UA, I talked about this actually on the Wishlist podcast series that I think 45 and 46 are the new hotness, that I wonder how, we all look back upon 41, that they were the ones that kind of ended up being the progenitor of this new era curse of one tribe just basically falling apart. Mary, now that we're a few years removed from Survivor 41, do you think that helps or hurts their reputation?
I don't know. I mean, I think that just going back, like in the Survivor wish list, I thought so fondly on so many of the people from this tribe, and it's like, at some point things become almost nostalgic. And while I don't think we have nostalgia for season 41 yet, I think that when it comes to thinking back on hot mess tribes, time can only help you. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the stats. So we've got Ricard here with the furthest placement at 5th on this season from the Ua tribe. Also, like, they have the best of both, being like a very losing tribe, losing so many of the early challenges, also just so many wild moves, like the JD vote I'll never forget about. You've got Brad here, who's just such a kooky character.
He gets blindsided, like not unlocking his idol but still having it in his pocket, but also having an extra vote that he couldn't use.
Could he not vote?
He couldn't vote, no.
He couldn't vote, but he had an extra vote and an idol that wasn't activated. And that really summed up where we were 3 episodes into the new era of Survivor.
Yes.
And JD himself was also voted out with the vote steal. Or no, he gave it to Shan to use later on.
Right. And then, of course, everything, the friends to enemies with Shannon Ricard, I feel like was so interesting. Jeannie was such a great character. I think there's a lot here, actually. And I think, like, it's hard not to compare. I mean, that's what we're doing here. We're ranking, we're comparing. But when you compare this to the previous one we just talked about in Edge of Extinction, I feel like maybe it's because it's a smaller tribe. Like, I feel like just as much, if not more, mess happened on this tribe with, 2/3 of the people.
Oh, that's efficient. Yeah, you're able to cram nine people's worth of mess into 6 people.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Sarah didn't do anything. What did she do wrong? So I feel like there's a couple of things here. The first one being, Mike, you said that it started kind of like the curse of these like new era disaster tribes. Is it a curse when production is putting them on the bad beach and they're taking away their
It's a self-appointed curse. They gave them the poison apple.
Yeah, it's just like, throwing like a marble in front of someone so they trip and then being like, well, it was fate. Like, the production-led curse of new era disaster tribes, of which there are going to be so many in this tier list, because again, it is like a seasonal thing. And then you try to say that they were kind of like, the Matt Singh and Malcolm and Denise. Were they? Because Malcolm and Denise both made the finale. One of them won. As we're saying, neither, the highest placing of this Malcolm and Denise pair didn't make it as far as like the losingest of that pair. It is early in the morning and my brain is...
the question is, does that make them messier?
And not even just... Exactly. Is that good or bad? Because also, not only that, but like Malcolm and Denise were locked in, like they were a really good duo. They dominate through the game. Like, that's the pair. As we were saying, like, intentional Matt Singh for ages because of Malcolm and Denise. Like, do that. And then Shannon Ricard came along, fighting about who should have the advantage, eventually blindsiding each other. And we were like, I don't think we meant intentionally Matt Singh like that. And so this taught us
the job.
The other side, the other side of intentionally Matt singing, which is that sometimes it doesn't go so well. So again, is that points or not? What would be better? That they did really well, they did really poorly? I don't know.
All right, well, let's put our noses to the grindstone here and think about where we want to put Ua. And now that we're starting to really compare these groups against each other, All Being Tree, this is our first new era tribe. As Shannon said, there's going to be many that come before or after them. So the question is this the barometer, or are we already sort of mentally comparing this to other hot mess tribes that would probably stand out more from a new era perspective?
I do think like every other new era disaster tribe is better.
Yeah, but
off the top of my head,
I feel like this was more of a disaster tribe. I think that this is higher than Mesu in My Life is Fine.
I think I put it lower. I feel like it just like it was less winning than Matt Singh. It's like a poor man's Matt Singh, but should that be better? No, I'm gonna have.
They got one more win than Matt Singh, so I guess that counts.
Yeah, but like as a tribe, at least even the pair couldn't get along. They got down to 2 people, and those people were feuding. And to this day, right? Like, like where's Shannon Ricard now? I feel like that didn't end well.
Wait, so hold on. Do you think this is higher or lower?
I don't know. I
You
don't
started
understand
saying they were
what
lower,
you're
and now
saying.
you've.
I honestly think that this was like, let's wake you up, get you on here at 8 a.m. and then have you backwards think all of this, and my brain is broken, Mary.
I think you have to go a little bit with gut, and I feel like in the moment watching this season, I feel like there were so many things that happened that I can look at the picture of Mesu and be like, wow, there were some wild people on that. But I feel like when you look at both the stats and just thinking about I cannot remember these tribes. I'm like, they were messy. I mean,
maybe it's the color coordination in me. I would definitely put it in my life as fine. And at this moment, I think I would put it above.
Okay,
Messy.
I'm with you.
I think this is where memorability comes in as well. I think that Mesu could be this like Criterion Collection undiscovered movie that is showing on TMC one night, and you're like, oh, actually, I didn't realize how good this was.
That's what I said. The factor. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that Ua does have. I think while Manu and Lesu actually did target each other post merge, it was not nearly as iconic as the Shannon Ricard turning on each other, which again does feel like Bizarro, Malcolm and Denise.
Yeah, it was exceptional television that like they got so far together, and like this was gonna be the duo, and then it just like didn't go that way at all. And I do feel like for me, the one thing that could take away from it is like at the time it was like, oh, this is such a disaster tribe. But then when it started happening every season and you did realize that it was just like a very big part of this format, it was like, oh, okay. So that's not like so original to them. Like that's gonna happen every twice a year. We're gonna do that twice a year. So I might put it a bit lower, but you guys win, and that's why we have 3 people on these podcasts.
Majority rules.
Yeah, so that it doesn't just get stuck in an endless loop.
Well, Shannon, I feel like unfortunately you may have felt your argument was defanged, but let's put a little bit of Fang back in there as we talk about Fang, our next hot mess tribe. Now, this is interesting. With some of these, we're talking about like specific iterations of the tribe. I went with like the OG draft Fang that was able to win a couple of challenges, which maybe might work against it. But certainly if you remember the like previously on Survivor when Jeff was narrating, he would have painted them as like an absolute atom bomb in the game, that they were disasters in challenges, that they had all these older, weak people, that they couldn't find a leader until GC was basically enlisted for it. And then he ended up running away during one portion of it. But what do you think, Mary? Looking back, how does Fang seem to be messy to you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is one of the first ones that comes to mind for me when I hear just the concept of being a hot mess tribe. Like you have someone trying to row away to not go to a challenge. You have instant fighting. Look at this cast. You've got elephant dung up in here. You've got people trying to eat ants in order to impress each other. There's so many gifts and screams and fighting. Crystal. Look at the tribe. Look at the tribe.
Yeah.
Like this is amazing. So I'd say that Fang is. This is very high for me. What's interesting about Fang, looking at the stats, and it does get confusing because there are multiple iterations, like you mentioned. They don't do terrible overall. I mean, we've got Susie in second place here.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also got, Crystal, Kenny, and Maddie are all what
654.
654.
Yeah, because basically due to the multiple swaps, the Fangs are able to recruit Sugar to their side.
Right.
And while Randy does defect, that's when they take the lead in the merge and run the table for a bit of time until Bob goes on his run, and then they kind of start going after each other.
The one thing that's funny looking at this cast is, if you had asked me, I'm not, I've got some Survivor memory, but I would have sworn that Sugar was on this tribe to begin with, and that Randy wasn't.
She represents Fang a lot more than Kodak.
Yeah.
Well, I think of Randy as being like a very reluctant person. He's like, I'm surprised he's not standing 2 feet away in this picture being like, I don't want to be part of this.
No, this is even better. Like, look, Crystal's arm is around him.
How did he
land on GC, but he looks so unhappy about it.
He looks
He's
like
like, you
Crystal's
know,
son.
someone said, get in there. Like, I don't want to be in this picture.
And I wonder how soon this was after Randy's head trauma as well. That he's like,
Oh
I
my
don't want
gosh,
to be here.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
actually amazing because no one else in the photo is touching each other, but he is being touched and is touching G. It's like he would hate that the most. But like,
And-
why is he in this position? Why is this happening?
Is Michelle wearing someone else's jacket? Like, there's no way that she
yeah,
came in
this
with
looks like
that.
the jacket of the late Dan Kay, I would imagine, because she was
Oh
also
my
like a
goodness.
boxer, and they didn't necessarily send her in wearing her best business casual.
Why does Randy look like he's like in like an old war photo? It's like you can tell he's like seeing some stuff, and he's like, but no one else is bringing that energy except like he and Crystal and GC look like they're in a completely different photo from everyone else. Like, what is happening?
It helps to that the Gabon is known as like a hot mess season. Like, this is just
that's
one
my
of those
issue though.
Season.
That's my counterpoint.
But I think if you look at the two tribes, like, there are some people in the other tribe, there are some things that happen, but most of the hot mess things that happen with the Coda tribe are after they've done some swapping around and have some Fang members on there. So, I mean, I put this one very high in my opinion.
My criticism is what you just said, which is Gabon. If we were ranking hot mess seasons, Gabon's number one. Does this tribe stand out? As you said, you couldn't even remember that Sugar wasn't on it. There are going to be swaps pretty early on that I think define the season more. Does this iteration of these players specifically stick out as this tribe? Even if people within this iteration are going to fight through the season and are iconic in their own right, as characters, as feuds, does this iteration of this tribe
But
really
Shannon,
stick out
Shannon,
like a Matt thing?
He got in a boat and was trying to run away.
I hear that.
That's the thing. I think there are, like, this isn't just mess. This is its own special breed of mess. This is the tribe that brings you eat your rice. This is the one that is obviously also, if you talk about, like, does post-merge conflict boil over? This is going to lead to the aforementioned forget you, go home, goodbye, where there is a lot of tension.
Which is on the tier list, which means that it should be the opposite of forget you, go home, goodbye, because that's how we're thinking of things.
I do think it's worth playing for. The question is, right now, before or after Pagong?
So
I would have it after, because I just think that Pagong is so certified as a tribe. In saying that, every single time that my like season watch list comes out and Gabon is not high on it, I get so many drive-bys that I'm just like, what's happening out there? So I don't want that to happen to me here. So I want to be outvoted. And I want everyone to remember that I was very high on this being the highest possible tribe.
I think my problem is I already feel like Pagong is too high, and I understand the, like, you get the name like Pagonging and everything, but I think of a Pagonging more as like you have one tribe that has their ish together more so than that Pagong didn't.
But spectacularly fails.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they lose so many points for me from being so early on that you really couldn't have expected them to do better. I think most people watching the first season of Survivor, having no context for anything else about Survivor, would have thought, wow, look at the Tagi tribe getting together. And they would have gone, yeah, but they should be playing like Pagong. And it's only in retrospect that you realize how badly Pagong did it.
You're less judgmental than I am, because I feel like had I like been watching at the time and had been an adult, I would have been like, those idiots, you know?
I don't think I've ever seen a better out of context quote for this podcast than Tommy Tomato saying Shannon is Tupac confirmed.
Yeah, no, I think it speaks for itself.
Exactly. I am going to once again agree with Mary here. I am going to slot it above Pagong just because, to me, I think personality hot mess wins out over strategic hot mess to me.
That's already where I'm not at. This is going to be an issue.
This is interesting. This is where
Mary brought the stats.
I did bring the stats, but what I think is, for me, what's interesting about the stats is I don't think that this is only about the losingest. So for me, a hot mess tribe where they're going very back and forth, where they're voting out their own people once they've merged and stuff. To me, that is so much more of a hot mess than just someone who like loses a bunch of early challenges.
Possibly Ua should have been higher, because in talking about it, they do have both.
Yeah,
but
so,
okay.
Wait, I don't know. We'll see. We can always shift these around. Well, I've got some double trouble for you as we're doing back-to-back Randy Bailey seasons. This is one I want to bring up for discussion here. Let's talk about the villains from Heroes versus Villains. This is an interesting one. This is going to be the first, I think, of a few we're going to talk about where, if you look at the stats, if you look at the record, it's not necessarily there.
Pretty
They
good
won,
record. Got a few winners there.
Yeah, first
And-
through fourth on this tribe.
and they won just as many challenges as the heroes. Like, they were actually pretty in lockstep. But if you look at it from an interpersonal perspective, once we get to that Tyson vote, it really falls apart, where we have this, minority vote out. Then we have Coach and Jerry flipping on Rob, and then they end up flipping back to take out Coach. So from a conflict perspective, they obviously are at odds by the end of the merge, but it then does culminate to them joining up together.
Here's what's tricky for me, is I feel like the Villains tribe, I don't think of it as a hot mess tribe. I think of it as a divided tribe, which I think is different. I think that we have two relatively loyal warring factions. Forget the Tyson thing for a moment. but other than that, like, it is an iconic tribe with a lot of really great players and some great moves. But I think you've just got like a Russell side and then a Robin Tyson side, or you could even put Sandra, as the leader on that side. And so, yeah, they went after each other. They didn't get along. But I think for me, hot mess is more of a whole collective group of people that are all firing at each other and all being wild.
Yeah, this isn't a collective effort. This is the Russell factor, where yes, it is like the Rob versus Russell teams, and then also Russell's team will make it very far and be like, Sandra's there as the winner, but like that's the winning group, and Sandra wasn't really on Russell's side. But Russell's side then will disintegrate because Russell will vote out Danielle out of jealousy. Like, he and Parvati are in like a very scary toxic relationship. So it's not like that went so well as well. But in saying that, I don't really think of the Villains as a hot mess tribe. It will feel weird to put probably the most iconic tribe of all time in a low tier, but that's the fun of what we're doing, that it's opposite to what you think.
Especially, I think that when you compare them with the Heroes tribe, in some ways, the Heroes tribe is more of a hot mess tribe.
Is true.
It really is more
was
interpersonal fighting. They had
two ships crossing in the night. We're like
strategic issues.
Yeah, Heroes started off, absolutely yelling at each other, and you have some very divided dynamics. But once Tom goes and Colby kind of gets absorbed into everything when James gets taken out, then
it goes really well for them, right?
I mean, for the rest of the pre-merge, it does, to the point where they're all unified and deciding to write a letter to Russell.
They're all unified in their stupidity. I mean, you could actually think the heroes are the ones who give the idol to the villains. So possibly the villains were getting a lot done. Like, if you look at success, which again are points not in their favor in this criteria, as we're saying, the whole final four, they get the idol from the heroes. They have like one of the biggest successes in Survivor history at the merge by winning that war. And on the individual stats, they've all done pretty well in the game before, during, or after.
See, that's a good question. Legacy as well. Like, does it help or hurt a hot mess tribe's legacy if it then breeds some Survivor legends from it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I think we're all kind of saying the same thing, but like this tribe, they had a split tribe, but they were winning under Rob's kind of leadership in the beginning. And then there was a big messy thing that happened in the middle of the pre-merge there with Tyson. And then after that, it was kind of like, all right, now we're just unified on the Russell side. So I don't think this is particularly hot messy.
All right, would you put it? Go ahead.
Just Tyson, like the big messy thing that happened. That should be the title of that episode. Just Tyson going home on the big messy thing that happened. I would put this, I think, in Forget You Go Home Goodbye, which is sad because I think this was the first buff I ever got. The Villains tribe, the most iconic tribe. But as a hot mess, they actually did do a lot. Even within all the fighting, they got so much done with so much success. We get the winner, and a lot of them I think still probably really like each other.
Wow.
Well, the Rob and Sandra, that's going to play out years down the track.
And to be fair, Parvati and Sandra only recently made up with each other. So this is a long-festering conflict.
Through time there. Parvati and Sandra, I guess still on Winners at War. There was the mess there.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally would put this in Ain't No Hershey Bar, but I will not have any qualms with matching it up with the red.
Also, this is a complete side note, but now I'm curious. What was the first buff you got, Mike?
The first buff I got was a Drake buff. And then I got a Kendrick buff right afterwards.
A what buff?
No, I got a Drake buff from Pearl Islands back in like 2003.
I was like, what tribe is that? All right.
You're Tupac, Shannon. You should know.
Mary, what was the first buff you ever got?
I think mine was the merge tribe buff from Vanuatu. The
Oh,
Alinta buff.
Alinta.
Yeah, I think that was the first
Okay.
one I had.
Good color. Good color.
Well,
Yeah.
in what
I know.
context?
I know it
it
was
like
orange.
when did you get that? Tell us about
My
it.
dad went to a live audition and they were like giving them out at the live auditions back in the day.
So yeah, audition for
Take these
Survivor people. You
Vanuatu
might
buffs.
get-
We can't get rid of them quick enough now.
All right, well, let's move on here to our next group. We're actually going to keep sticking with Red and see
Wait,
if
did
we
your dad audition for Survivor?
Oh yeah, a long time ago.
That's
It
fun.
wasn't a good audition. I still have it. I watch it
I'll
fondly.
pay money. I will pay money to. No, I don't even know your dad, and I still want to watch it. My
Somebody-
dad auditioned
yeah.
for The Amazing Race with my cousin, and that was a pretty funny audition.
This is
Honestly, they
amazing.
missed out not casting them.
It's one of my favorite ideas to go back and remake my dad's audition, just shot for shot. Because
Yes!
That's incredible.
That needs to
You know,
happen.
some people like years later do like the baby photos recreated as birthday
Yeah.
presents. You should do that. Incredible birthday present troll.
This is a great idea. Let me write this
this is-
down. Thank you, Shannon.
Well,
I'll
it's
do it for
interesting that you're
present.
both talking about loved ones participating in auditions
Mike's
for
trying
reality
so
TV
hard
shows.
to get this hot mess back on track. That's
Because the next group we're talking about are the loved ones from Survivor Blood versus Water. This is another bit of a forgotten gem. So this is Tadhana. So these were the loved ones. Again, remember the returnees were all on one tribe. The loved ones were on another. And again, we might forget because there's a couple big things we remember from Blood versus Water. But this was a pretty disastrous group. If Boston Rob was the one that was leading a fractured villains to success, Brad Culpepper was basically his opposite in that he was trying to rally them under his leadership. But even he was flippant. They get rid of Marissa because of what happened with Jervis in the first challenge. Then they flip to get rid of Rachel. Then they flip again to take out John Cody because they fear that he might have the idol. And then we have that whole chaotic situation where a tie vote is forced and Brad ends up going. That being said, certainly on the more forgotten end of the tribe we're talking about. Shannon, how does that bear weight for you?
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple of things that are not in this tribe's favor. The first being it's like you just introduce them by saying you don't really think about it or whatever you just said a couple of seconds ago. And also
You're so forgettable, you forgot what I said.
It is so early. And when you show me the initial list, I think I said, they don't need to be on. So I think that doesn't speak well. There's a lot there in terms of how it goes for the personalities. Like obviously Brad Culpepper leading it, and he's like the way we think about bad math now. So from a stats perspective, that's probably not good, right? That's like anti-math. And I do think it's funny that the way it ends up going with this tribe is they lose to the fact that Sierra works it out too late that she should be with them. So then they have to go to rocks. And then that's how like the house of cards falls because they lose at rocks. So that's interesting. In saying that, I just don't think it's that memorable when we think about hot mess tribes or disaster tribes. I feel like this doesn't come to mind. What do you think, Mary?
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think that they were put in such a sticky situation of being the loved ones.
That was the other Blood versus Water season.
So they were already kind of off to a rough start there, but yeah, all in all, let's see. Tadhana, not great on placement actually. Now that I'm remembering it. So Sierra here in 5th place with the highest placement. But other than that, I think they were just kind of like it's sort of like some other tribes we might mention that they were let's make it so much more difficult for them to do well because we'll put all of their loved ones with any of the Survivor know-how in the other tribe and let's see how it goes. And I think it goes about as well as everyone kind of thought it would.
Yeah, it feels unfair to do it to like the favorites tribe equivalent again. Well, the fans, against favorites.
Right. This sort of represents. I didn't put either one of the fans' tribes on here, but this sort of represents them of like in the incredibly unbalanced format of putting Survivor alumni against people who have never played the game before. They hit their expected value in challenge wins, which I think was 1.
Right. Yeah, and also like daring to ask the question, do loved ones of returnees pick it up by osmosis? And we found out like, no, not really.
Well, but here's the thing. If you had put loved ones of players against complete newbies, they might do well. that would be a better test.
What an odd concept.
I like though. This is like,
that would
it would be like Survivor, what's the show where it's like famous people's siblings?
Claim to Fame, yeah.
Survivor Claim to Fame. That would be good.
Yeah.
I like this. We're pitching.
That actually
audition
was a
recreation
Summer of Survivor
videos.
idea.
We're pitching future reality show ideas. We're basically a Shark Tank baked within a months-long podcast series.
I think that would, firstly, that's literally what we've been doing. I really think that. And also, I think that is an interesting season because it's like we found out our loved ones almost as good as like the returnees. No, our loved ones better than a regular person. Let's find out. Anyway, something for the future. That'll probably be when like in decades from now, it's like Survivor Next Generation, and it's just like Boston Rob's kids against the randoms. So that'll be
where do we want to put this here? Are we also again sliding in and forget you go home goodbye, or does it eke its way onto Ain't No Hershey Bar?
I feel like it's somehow like it's maybe the worst. Like at least the villains is like very memorable, but maybe the villains is memorable for its success, so it should be last. Help! I mean,
the villains are certainly more memorable in their messier aspects, in the conflict, even post-merge when they're still together. You have Sandra quite literally telling Russell that she's against him. You have Danielle being gaslit to the extent of tears at Tribal Council due to her own tri-mates. And again, I think Tadhana kind of burned fast and bright. But I also wonder if the fact that they kind of delivered what we expected to with the entire concept of Blood versus Water meant that they don't pop as much as a hot mess tribe by comparison.
You know what, Mike, you've sold me. I think they're the worst one we've talked about so far.
There we go.
Now that almost should put them up, because if they're that bad at this, that speaks to me in the middle.
Yes, the spectrum is just one giant circle. It's a snake eating its own tail.
I'm help me, Paul.
Well, we took a couple of trips down to the bottom, but I have full confidence that we're shooting straight up to the top.
Woo!
Here we are.
The one I was referring to. When you think of hot mess tribes, I mean, this has got to be top
I really couldn't
3
tell, because there's so many tribes you could have been referring to where someone did say, I'll find you in your shitty little apartment. Like, that could have been about 5 or 6 of them.
There's a lot of implicit times that was said about these tribes.
I think
people say with their eyes, you know?
I mean, I'm just, like, I can't not smile when looking at this group of people. Casaya, oh, man.
Are you crying?
In comparison to, let's just say, what is it, Lamina? I don't even remember the other tribe, right?
It's Lamina. Lamina was so
They were
boring.
so boring.
You know what we should do next time? Boring tribes. Lamina will be at the top.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think that should be a punishment for somebody. Like, Shannon, next time you lose a game, you are forced to do a tier list of boring tribes.
I think we have fun.
Courtney, you've got Shane. You put it this way:
you
have who was known as one of the most boring winners for so long, and Aris doesn't even pull this tribe down. Like, that's how strong the power of Casaya is.
Yeah.
You have Bruce, you have Bob Dog, Sari. I mean, come on. Like, I can't just. This is such a chaotic tribe, and funnily enough, this is a tribe that is chaotic, but still, like, relatively winning, I feel like, in terms of like their challenge.
They do very well.
That's where I think on paper we would usually say, well, like the villains, well, they dominated in the post-merge. They enter the merge with numbers. But this is where I think that Je ne sais quoi beats it out. That, like, they're just such a nuclear reactor of personalities that it doesn't matter. And when they do go to tribal council, they vote somebody out 3-2 to 1-1 somehow.
Yeah, and then eventually Sari will use pretty much this whole tribe and Terry in the 3-2-1. So plurality votes, which is not the criteria, but I'm putting it in there. Like, Casaya have so much more success than they should for how much of a hot mess they were, which is fascinating. Like, they hate each other, but they work together, which is strange. But if you look at, which is, like, I think maybe even more iconic, but if you look at each person, I mean, there's so much going on. Shane speaks for itself. As you've said, I'll kill you in your shitty little, I'll find you. Is it I'll find you in your shitty little apartment and then kill you?
Yeah, something
or
like
I'll kill you in your shitty little, whatever. All of these things are probably getting this video banned from YouTube. Shane showing his nether regions to Sari.
Way before Sari experienced the nether region last year in Big Brother.
Don't remind me that the nether gorgon, was that a thing?
Oh, that was a thing.
Well, that's in the recesses of my brain as well. Shane speaks for himself. Bruce getting medevaced the way that he did, hilarious. Sari, not even Sari can help this tribe. Courtney, all of these things speak for themselves. Yeah, and then all of the fact that they still beat Lamina. Lamina, how much did you suck that you were losing to this tribe? So Yeah, they do very well, but it's iconic. I think this is top of the list for me. So far.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really see any argument against putting it above Fang and Pagong for now. I think the bigger question is going to be, will it remain at the top by the end of this?
Well, and I think what's great is like when you compare this to Fang, for example, it's got a lot of the same messiness that that Fang does, but the characters are a little more likable overall. So it just makes you smile and talk about how messy you are instead of rolling your eyes and talking about
and it's more memorable. I think if you go to Casaya first.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Well, let's stick on the note of purple and let's move on to a purple tribe that exists in the new era. Let's talk a Tika here. So I'm talking, I mean, this is sort of for me maybe a bit of a mashup of the quote unquote old and new Tika, which basically swaps out Carson for Josh. But this is a group that has an okay track record. You know, they do win 2 immunity challenges, but you have, you know, all of the personality clashes going on even between Jam Jam and Carolyn. But, you know, Carolyn utilizing Josh's idol play to get rid of Sarah. You have her tricking Sarah. You have Bruce getting medevac within 11 hours and leaving them down a person from the get-go here. Now, the big question is, Mary, is this one that is helped or hurt by the fact that the Tika 3 will rise from the ashes of this tribe and become one of the most powerful alliances in the new era?
Yeah, I think what's tricky is this is a situation we're going to talk about a lot, which is you've got some messy people, but does that necessarily mean it's a messy tribe? I don't know.
People are like half the tribe at least.
Well, I guess what I'd say is like when you have, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say Carson super messy, but like when you have Carolyn and Jam Jam being such iconic, messy players to some extent, but they're doing well and they are aligned with each other for a lot of it. Like, I don't know. I go back and forth. Although I am looking at Bruce now. I did forget about Bruce. So
yeah.
But the question is like, does now seeing what Bruce did on 45, it does, I think, made me look at it a little differently of like, oh, there was even more mess potential if Bruce had stayed in the game.
Oh my gosh.
Because for like a whole season, we had like Bruce would have like brought them all together. He seemed like such like the clear like leader, father figure type. He would have really normalized this whole situation.
We thought how stable he was going to be as part of this tribe.
And then when we saw 45, we were like, oh, okay. So you are a Tika. So I think that like the how long that punchline took is funny in and of itself. It's funny because the Tika 3 are so dominant. But when we talk about like Shannon Ricard on Ua, and we will talk about Malcolm and Denise on Matt Singh, they were both. It was like Malcolm and Denise dominated, Ua fought, and they fought while dominating. Like Tika did that. So I think that parts of that are impressive. I mean, they certainly do very, very well, exceptionally well, to the like embarrassment of pretty much everyone else on this season. But they're so messy while doing it. But is it just Carolyn and Jam Jam then?
Right.
That's the thing, you know. Are we judging everything with no offense to Helen and Sarah, considerably cleaner. And Sarah considering
seems so normal. Yeah. Too normal for Tika. That's the thing.
Sarah is so clean. She had a vacuum cleaner advantage that she didn't end up using, where she could suck up all the advantages.
So like the claw machine advantage.
It's more so
really shows where we're at in our lives.
But the question is, you know, how much does the weight of like the interpersonal conflicts between Jam Jam and Carolyn and Jam Jam and Josh to a certain extent? Remember, they're sort of like 1-2 punch of a brief rivalry. How much does that carry weight? For me right now, I'm slated to put it in Ain't No Hershey Bar. I think that Ua, even comparing it to New Era tribes, is definitely the bigger hot mess. But I also think it's like not necessarily breaking the definition like Villains and Tadhana were.
I will say from an iconicness perspective, you know, in this like new era of tribe names that are all like two, what am I saying?
2 syllables.
2 syllables. Thank you. So early. 2 syllables together. You remember Tika. Like if you think of like say one tribe from the new era, people might say Tika first.
Really? I don't know. I think people would say Lulu first.
I was gonna say Lulu probably, but yeah.
Tika or Reba. Like
no.
if you have a name that is also the name of something else, that also helps a lot. Name recognition.
I think I would say Tika. And like again, and I would really struggle to tell you the other 2 tribes from this season, but I could definitely do Tika every time. And I think I'll be able to do it in 15 years. But ask me in 15 years. But I think memorability. I'd probably put it like ahead of Ua.
Oh really?
Ua. But then is that bad? Help.
See, I feel like 41 has more of that, like, just compare Shannon Ricard to, like, yes, Jam Jam was debating getting rid of Carolyn, but they still made the final 3 together.
But
And,
that's
like,
that's might be good.
and they
That's
would have gone
bad.
to the final 3 together if Heidi hadn't won the final immunity challenge.
I think the other thing is from pretty much the point where it comes down to Carson, Jam Jam, and Carolyn, they're pretty much more or less in lockstep until basically close to the end when they
Not
start
fighting.
getting to win. I mean, they're fighting, but they're strategically working together. It's
Yeah,
like
they
it's
are
got both of those.
I would say it's got the mess. It's not hot enough for me.
Okay, it's like a
Wow.
cold mess.
I'm gonna tell him you said that.
A cold mess sounds just awful.
Yeah, it does. So I think you're right though that I would put it near-ish to 41, but I'm not really sure.
All right, put it behind Dua then.
Yeah.
All right, I can put it in front of Manu.
I can't wait for
Manu
my
was just so
boring
forgettable
tier
to me, which is so sad. I'm sorry.
All right, well, let's move on.
Literally,
here.
as we said it, I was like, which one is Manu?
I know.
From 10 minutes ago. So true.
Well, we talked about one hot mess, Blood versus Water tribe. Let's talk about another one here. Hunapu. So I'm talking original Coke Hunapu. And it's weird because they won 3 out of the first 4 immunity challenges. Should have won the 4th, but maybe that speaks to their hot mess quality in that Drew Christie, God bless his soul, decides to throw a challenge because he is like instinctually, devoutly in belief that there is a women's alliance and he has to get rid of Kelly Wentworth right now.
That was why he did it?
He saw the appeal in her. But Hunapu, I think, is one of these groups where you look past the stats and there is so much messiness underneath the floorboards. This is a group that lost their Flint, tried to negotiate with Jeff to get a new one, traded in a reward and successfully got one, then found their first one and tried to give it back because they hadn't used it. This is a group that had Keith find an idol, then tell people that Jeremy had it, and had the 2 of them fighting a tribal council. I mean, the reason why I brought this in is because Natalie Anderson quite literally says, and it makes the title of an episode, at their only tribal council, we're a hot mess, Jeff.
But this tribe, I'm going to put them low because I literally did also say to Mike, I don't think they should be on the tier list. And Mike was like, well, then you should rank them low. And now it's happening because iconic tribe, too iconic for their own good. 2 winners produced from this tribe. Kelly Wentworth doesn't even do well, will go on to be an icon. Like, there's success here. And I think you remember that a lot more than you remember the mess. Like, it is funny that they lost their Flint and then found it after they'd already gone through pains to get a Flint back. That is good. The Drew Christie stuff, he's messy in that, and I feel like that's very individual. Keith Nail, that speaks for itself as well. But I still think as a tribe, I think more about the other victories than I think about their mess as a tribe for me.
Who is on the bottom right? Oh, is that Julie? I was like, I can't even tell.
How dare you forget Julie McGee? Maybe you didn't recognize her, Mary, without granola.
No,
in
it
her
just
bra.
it didn't look like her. I'm like, who is this woman? Like it looks like Candace Cody. Okay, so
You wouldn't have to question who anyone else is on this tribe except Julie, but that makes her the best for this tier list, given what we're trying to do, I think.
So I would say I agree with most of what Shannon said, although I do feel like I think they do deserve to be talked about here just based on like some of the things they do. I mean, like, we got Keith Nail. I mean, like there was a lot that happened. You could even say, even though it's a strategic move, it's a strategic hot mess move what Natalie pulls off with forgetting to vote for the right person and stuff. Like there's quote unquote forgetting. I feel like that's the kind of thing that just works so well on this tribe. So I think that I'd say that they're more of a hot mess than like the villains tribe, but they're also pretty relatively low.
I don't know, like even compared to Koyopa, like Koyopa could possibly be more of a hot mess with everything Val was doing with the John Rocker of it all.
Yeah, it was really an interesting comparison as to which tribe would make it on here. Koyopa had a few pretty wild rounds. I think that quite literally there were more material things that Hunapu did. And again, I just couldn't turn away from the fact that Natalie does say they're a hot mess tribe, and this is a hot mess tribe's rating. That being said, like highest I could probably go is Ain't No Hershey Bar on this. I don't know if they're bottom tier, but they're not top half for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're above villains, but that's all I can give you.
I think I put them below the villains.
Really?
Because they also have so much success like the villains do, but I also feel like the villains, at least like their issues are more iconic because everything the villains do is iconic, so they're always going to get iconic points.
I mean, I do think the conflict on the villains is certainly more well remembered than the conflict on Hunapu, but does that come from the fact that we had, 8 episodes of villains versus 4 episodes of Hunapu?
Yeah, that's important.
But,
That's a stat.
strategic hot mess where you have 2 battering rams going against each other.
No, that's Casaya.
Is that hot mess, or is that just strategically opposition? Like, I'm not sure. I think it's tricky because to your point about Natalie saying that they're hot mess, I think back on the times when I have said like, oh, it's a hot mess today. I feel like a hot mess. And usually what I mean is like, it's chaotic. I can't get my thoughts together. I have a lack of sleep.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know what's up and what's down. Like, and I feel like I could see that being in Hunapu more so than in the Villains tribe, where it's like we've just got people butting against each other. So I don't know.
But it's not just like the villains. If that would be true, and they'd be even lower if that was how it played out. Like Russell's side wins, and then then it's just smooth sailing for the end. That was not what it was like with Russell's side, to the point where none of them even win. So like that's the topsy-turviness of the villains.
Yeah.
Hunapu, I would put him behind the villains. But maybe they get points because the Flint thing was funny. But I just don't think we think of them as a hot mess tribe.
I think Mike needs to break the tie on this one. I'm not sure.
I will side with Shannon on this one. I'm going to put them before the villains. I'll put them after the villains right now. Though our poor little Hershey bar tier ain't no submissions in it. So maybe we'll have to do a little bit of a restructuring because we're starting to move into the second half here. But before we do, we've said it 3 times basically, so Beetlejuice style, it must appear in front of us. Matt Singh. Now, this is going to be fairly simple in what tier it is in, but Mary, the big question is, where does it lie in the top tier for you?
Oh, so again, if we were going with losing-ish tribes, they're far and away, right? One of the
0% win record.
Right. I think that the one thing that's pulling them down from being like the most losing, because they're definitely a hot mess tribe, but just like when you think of them, when you hear the name, we use them a lot of times to compare.
We literally use them like 10 times today.
Yes, but my question is, there's mess early on, and then there's just an inability to win. But the inability to win does come from a lack of cohesion, which increases it as compared to some of the like more new era losing his tribes. It's more like, well, you just have a lack of skill set or whatever. You look at his tribe, doesn't look.
They don't have Flint. It's production based.
I think the one thing that pulls them down is Malcolm and Denise. And the success that they have on their even with Denise.
You hear that, Malcolm and Denise? You're dead weight in this.
Yeah. Even with Denise going to other tribal councils, she does a good job in those, in that position. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So I feel like the Zane Knight of it all, the Russell, the Roxy, and Angie. I mean, that's 4 strong points for Matt Singh being a hot mess, though.
I agree to a certain extent. Now, look, I love me some Philippines. I love me some Matt Singh. But I think if you look at it, and again, this is why Casaya might be the unquestioned untouchable number 1, not to spoil the rest of this podcast, but it's going to be tough for me, is that Casaya, yes, it had an opposite challenge record, but there was so much messy drama baked into it. Right. Matt Singh, like, Zane brought some chaos, but I don't think from an interpersonal perspective, this is really remembered as a messy tribe. If anything, from a strategic perspective, it was like Malcolm and Denise were kind of surreptitiously stirring the drink of this entire thing, to the point where Russell Swan's entire boot episode is basically one long eulogy of like, well, they lost again, and Russell Swan is definitely going. I think there's some fun like personality moments, like Angie with the cookies and Roxy speaking in tongues. But I think all of that, like, there's comedy as well in Casaya too. I would say I could put this above Fang, but this is not touching Casaya for me, much like Sari did not want to touch Shane's nether regions.
Yeah, and I think that there's a tribe that comes after this that echoes a lot of Matt Singh that I think is actually messier. So Yeah, I think I'm with
Well,
you. I think I'm with Mike. I think it's actually a toss-up to me on which side of Fang it's on. I'll say that.
for me, it's like I'm only choosing where it goes on either side of Kasaya. I feel like
Okay.
as a disaster tribe, this is
But
obviously
disaster and
at the
hot
top,
mess
but
are
it's different. But to be fair, disaster is part of a hot mess,
Yes.
and there's a lot there. I mean, Russell calling Jeff Lord, the fact that he like passes by the idol and it's like flashing. The fact that they like a lot of the other disaster tribes get that cathartic moment. Yanu just gets it. Mike put it in a video side by side where it's like they finally get the win and you cry. I cried. It was emotional. Matt Singh, like they get the slow-mo and then it doesn't happen. And that is so sad and kind of funny. And
It's
yes,
sad
Malcolm
and
and Denise bring
funny.
it back. But the thing about Malcolm and Denise being good is that it also like puts two like kind of normal people in there to be the barometer of like all the insanity. And that's actually like a pretty good metric as well of just like watching it all unfold. Because yeah, the other four that go home around them all have their hot mess qualities.
Here's the question I'd say. If you plug in some success, they went just at any point before it's only down to Malcolm and Denise. At any point, if they had won a challenge, I think that they work well together, whoever's there. I think that Malcolm and Denise
But they
pick
didn't.
any but I think but not in challenges. I'm saying strategically. I think Malcolm, Denise, and Russell could have worked fine together if they had won and had the opportunity to. Their main source of messiness was just the losing, more so than the actual
I
personalities.
don't agree. Zayn, the fact that
But
one of the
like Zayn was
travel
out
classes was all
early.
about
I
cookies.
think if we're comparing it to Casaya, sorry, Casaya wins.
No,
on those
yeah, no. I've
personalities.
actually decided that Kasaya.
I think
is
Casaya
higher.
wins just
but I
because
think it has to be after.
I'm fine
I
with
think-
that. Yeah.
I think that's fine. I'd say me personally, I'd put it below Fang, but that's only because I think that Fang had both some losses and just like they had more not getting along. I think that's the one thing that Matt Singh I think got along okay. And maybe it's just that we didn't see enough because every episode was they lose a challenge, they have to vote someone out. And so they didn't get a chance to like try and work together in the same way that like Ua did, where we get to see Shannon
Mhm.
McCard rub each other wrong because they had to spend more time together. They had such a short amount of time to actually even try to work together. I don't know.
I think Russell was more chaotic than we're remembering. Like, I think that the funny thing about Russell was like he'd been this like leader type at Galoo in Samoa, and then he like came here. It was like, oh, like, it was like kind of like the Bruce factor. It was like, oh, you were crazier than we remember. Like, you kind of got like this like rose-colored glasses edit because it went like that way with the
He died a hero before living long enough to see himself become the man.
Well, yeah, he died like a hero before.
Well, he died, but then he got brought back to life.
Yeah, before living long enough to see himself showed as like a little bit unhinged, and that was the same thing. So I think that was funny. I think they were more chaotic and unhinged than we're giving them credit for. The losing is definitely the main point, but yeah, I think we've referred to them so much today. They have to be pretty high up. I'm happy with where it's at.
All right, I want to move on here because, Mary, I think I was picking up what you were putting down beforehand, and I think it only makes sense that we turn to the other side of the slingshot outcome here and talk about Yanu, one of our most recent hot mess tribes. And is this what you were mentioning before,
It's
Mary?
actually not, but we'll get to the one that I was mentioning before.
Because I think this is a tribe that definitely had a lot of personal conflict within each other. Like, they were losing, and also, even within this majority of three, there was still a lot of disagreement there. Q was apparently going to get rid of Kenzie. Kenzie and Tiffany were complaining about Q all the time, and then it leads to obviously everything blowing apart post-merge. What do you think, Shannon?
There's so much here. I mean, you could rewatch 46, where Q seemed like a fairly stable leader at the beginning with all of the madness around him from like Jelinski and Manu and Jess. And then you find out that like Q was the wackadoodle all along. So I think that is a point in its favor. They're going to get a win. I think that's important. But a win to the point of, I mean, like, look, and they both vote for Kenzie, Q and Tiffany. But like, there's a lot of drama before that happens. Kenzie wants to vote out Tiffany and doesn't even get to vote out Tiffany. Q and the chaos with all of that. So
they were still arguing at the final tribal council. They were still bickering back and forth,
which is incredible. I think the point out of their favor is like the opposite of Ua. With Ua, it was like, okay, you're a disaster tribe, and now we look back and we think, okay, this is like a part of the new era that production is doing. With Yanni, we already knew that, so it wore a little bit thin that it like was multiple seasons in a row of the Disaster Tribe, but like we've seen this film before, but they did it well. Still a great film. So I'm pretty high on Yanu.
Yeah, I'm really high on there as well. I mean, listen, if we did a completely different list of like the iconic tribes in the new era, I'd be hard pressed not to put Yanu number 1. And
wow, I think that's a hot take.
Maybe it's a bit of a hot take.
No, but that actually it makes sense.
But there is so much character and drama baked in here. It wasn't just Matt Singh where it was like, oh no, we're going to tribal council again. Like you said, we've seen that movie before, but this is a remake where the characters are all a little bit different. Where even just watching the arc of someone like Banu, who again has like a little bit of an odd moment in the first tribal council, but you're like, hey, he's not nearly as messy as Jess and Jelinski. And then when Jess and Jelinski go, it's like, oh no, he was much worse. Oh my
he
God.
Still wasn't the craziest of the tribe. We said it was like the monster, right? It was like every time that someone was voted out, then the next person would like take on all of that craziness as added to their own craziness. And it was just like, it just kept escalating. So yeah, I mean, it is unfortunate that so much of that pre-merge is not fun. Like the time we spent with Yanu, I can't say that I had a good time and I kind of want some of it back, but that might have just been due to how long the episodes were.
All right, Mary, what do you think? You haven't given your thoughts on Yanu yet.
Yeah, I think Yanu's great. So I think Yanu is like the improvement on Uwa. Like because we got to see more of them, because we got to see more of them get to the merge, we got to see. I mean, just imagine Q not being at the merge. Like if we had lost that earlier, or any one of Q, Tiffany, and Kenzie, and how that ended up going down. So I think even when you look at things like early on, Kenzie trying to, create a coalition with Banu and Jess, and like how that flops. Like I think that this tribe is. I know it's recency bias. It's very high for me. Like I
they do get a win, which is not
they
good,
do get a win. They do get a win. I think I love a tribe that tries to work together, has issues and fights, tries to work together, has issues and fights. And I feel like there were so many different arrangements of, even when you just look at Q and Tiffany and Kenzie, of different groups of those three that were working together. We're against the other one. We're trying to rat one of them out. We're trying to get one of their idols out. But, it's just a great tribe.
Yeah.
So it's high for me. I'm now we're getting to a point where it's like, does the nostalgia, is it warranted when you actually look at
I mean, listen, I'll put out a bid here. I'll put it above Fang.
Yeah.
I think it's above Fang.
I mean, I think Fang.
I think it's above Matt Singh, but that's just me. I don't think I'm gonna win.
I think Matt Singh, like, if we do this again, like 3 years from now, and we look back on how memorable Yanu was, but who knows? There might be, like we experienced with Ua, there might be tribes that even outdo Yanu a couple years down the line. But right now, I think Matt Singh has history on its side at the moment.
I think what's hard is that, like, the fun part of Yanu is that it turned out that they were so crazy. Like, Q was meant to be the stable one. Like, imagine going into the merge and then Malcolm is just completely unhinged. Like, imagine like the craziest version of Malcolm that you can possibly find, and that was him all along. But he's right compared to the others. But
then I'm saying, that's why I think this is higher than Matt Singh, because I think Matt Singh is more of a losing tribe. But even Kenzie, even Tiffany, they did wild things in a way that Malcolm and Denise didn't. Malcolm and Denise were, they might have made a couple bad game moves along the way, but they were so much more just sort of well-rounded, stable players than any combination of anyone from Yanu.
Convinced. Because like even Kenzie had that like blue eye confessional. Denise was more stable than Kenzie was.
When you talk about the intentional Matt Singh, you're not talking about, hey, let's all fight and be wild and messy. No, you're just talking about losing challenges. They are more losing, but they're not more of a hot mess.
I think I'm actually being convinced that I do think that, like, when we look at who makes it out of there, and if we look on a character by character basis, the fact that, I don't think we can say that Banu is even the messiest of this tribe has to speak very, very well to it in this criteria. So I think I might put it second. Is that recency bias? I don't know.
Let's the purple also works out really nicely too. So we can scooch up and we can make decisions as we keep going as well. Let's try to hammer through some of these other ones. Those were a couple big ones to talk about. I want to talk about Ravu here for a second. Ravu is the have-not tribe from Survivor Fiji. This is one of the tribes that Sylvia handpicked, only for them to lose the first challenge, meaning they got nothing at their camp, not unlike Yanu, actually. And surprise, surprise, they never won a challenge except for one time when a tribe gave away immunity, basically, to be like, no, we like our nice home. So Ravu, this is maybe a bit like Tadhana in that, like, what else did you expect? That one tribe that was given nothing would just continue to fester away while another tribe lived in luxury.
Yeah.
I feel like interpersonally, I mean, there was like the Rocky versus Anthony stuff, but Shannon, I can't really think of any other huge messy qualities just outside of the fact of the conditions they were living in.
Yeah, I think when you say like go girl, give us nothing, they don't mean like, oh no, don't actually give us nothing. Well, the other tribe get to live like kings. So yeah, it's hard to blame Ravu because from my memory, even like after the swap, the weirdly, strangely, the common denominator was having nothing compared to having everything.
So weird. Who would have thought?
Yeah, it's really strange how that experiment played out, exactly as you would think. So hard to blame the tribe itself. Like we say that it's baked into the new era format. This season said the quiet part loud in terms of that. So I don't really blame them. And also you have like Yao Man, you have Earl, did so well. For me, this is low because I don't think it's the tribe's fault.
Yeah. What do you think, Mary?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what you were saying. This reminds me of some of the things that we talked about with Tadhana, where it's like they were not set up well, and I think that while some of these people are kind of a hot mess, I'd put like the first swap version of Ravu as more of a hot mess.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
So I actually had a question mark in terms of like which version of Ravu are we even talking about?
I personally thought the first one, like the second one, it's still straightforward votes where they like, yes, the Rocky and Lisi boots were blindsides, but it was still like, I think the novelty of Ravu kept losing and them trying to have to deal with that time after time with these big personalities. That's to me what I remember as the messiest part of this group.
Yeah. So
what do we have last?
So that's Ravu right now. Is currently
before
Tadhana, and I put these in a similar situation.
I feel like you don't remember exactly who was losing as much as they were losing because they
right. So I think it should be kept in your Tadhana because I think both tribes were kind of structurally messed up. So the question is, and I think personally Tadhana had a little bit more personal drama and messiness in the blind sides to put it above Ravu. I might petition for Ravu to be at the bottom right now.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah,
I can go with that.
It's not their fault.
All right, well, let's go a little old school here. And we talked about one Boston Rob tribe, but I think it's time we talk about the original. And this maybe is a group that some consider the OG hot mess tribe. Maramu, a group of very big personalities, Rob, Sean, Peter Harkey and his many holes, Hunter, of course, Patricia, Mama. I mean, makes one of like the biggest initial blindsides in Survivor history when they choose to overthrow their leader, Hunter, in the vote right before the swap. Even the second version, like they win one reward challenge and one immunity challenge. I think 2 reward challenges, actually, the entire season. So the question is, Shannon, in comparison to all these other ones, does Maramu hold water here, or is it as holy as Peter's vices?
Yeah, I feel like for me, the memories of the success, like Vesepia's success, how they're going to eventually overthrow to like in a good way through the merge, which is very good. But if you think about it pre-merge, for me, it's not as iconic as a hot mess tribe. What do you think, Mary?
First off, I think I'm getting too old to find this version of
Danny
Boston
Glover
Rob cute.
Do you think that's going to happen with me and old school Ethan Zahn?
I know, it's tough, isn't it?
You don't want to age out of crushes.
I know. That's
Can we just crystallize him in Amber? Oh wait, he's married to her.
But ching. Yeah, I don't know. It is hard because they, like, when you think about Survivor Marquesas, you think about how losing Maramu was, but then you also think about the Road to 4 and how they flopped.
They're more losing to me.
Yeah, so they're losing as well. I mean, there was some wild stuff at the beginning, personality wise, but you also can like picture them sitting around and doing their like morning show stuff together. So there was some happy times.
Yeah, well, they were not the love tribe that was Road to, but they certainly had some. I think I would even say they had more conflict with the Road Twos, of course, like with the whole argument between Rob and Sean and Johnny Pots and Pans at the merge. I think it was more so the mess came through the fact that they were one of these first tribes in the initial seasons that couldn't win challenges. Through
Mhm.
4 episodes, through the first 3 seasons, they traded wins back and forth. Basically, Maramu, I think Ogakor did as well, but like Maramu lost 3 challenges in a row and then kept losing once the swap happens, which was something that hadn't really been done before in Survivor history.
Uh, I don't know. This is somewhere in the middle for me.
This might be Ain't No Hershey Bar. Maybe the reason,
maybe
reason
this
we're
is in
feeling
that.
like we don't know is because it sits in the no bands that we have
No, for
apparently put no tribes in.
For Marquesa, shouldn't it be Ain't No Snickers Bar?
Well, you can change
That
it.
is a reference to the fact that they had a reward of a Snickers bar during the
Very
Kite Line
good.
Challenge at Survivor
Very-
Marquesas.
That's
Very
true.
good Survivor history.
I feel like this is a situation where it's like they were kind of losing, kind of a hot mess. But when you compare them to, I gotta start looking back at the board. Who's the last in my life is mine? Is that Manu?
That's Manu.
Manu was louder with their mess.
They also lost the first 3 immunity challenges.
Manu had a
Right.
winner that did not play the game. I think
That's
this
true.
is Ain't No Hershey Bar. I think that's that feeling.
I think that's where it is.
What is this
Yep.
feeling? It's that. It's Ain't No Hershey
Yeah.
Bar. And now I actually know how it feels, and that's good because now I'll know when it comes up again.
Exactly. Now you discover the
Sounds good.
taste of every single one of these flights of tears, and now you have a nice little palate
Yeah.
for it.
I would prefer a Hershey Bar to a Snickers bar. I don't like Snickers at all.
All right, well, let's talk about someone who has a refined palate. Let's talk about Coach Wade and his original tribe. Let's talk Timbira. Now, Timbira is another one of these really interesting cases where they were unified. In fact, they lost only 2 out of 6 immunity challenges in the pre-merge, but I didn't include Galoo in this because they were kind of like the progenitor of this, that once the merge hit, all of those kind of festering conflicts that they couldn't act upon came out to mass effect. They fell in love with JT, Steven, and Taj immediately, blindsided Brendan. Then they flipped over with Aaron and Sierra to get rid of Tyson. Then they flipped back to get rid of Sierra. And then Debbie went, and then Coach went. And as a result, they really just fell apart despite having such big numbers at the merge.
Yeah, I feel like with Galoo, it's a lot of it is Russell, like succeeding more than it feels like it was specifically on them. I mean, definitely parts of it with like Shambo, but that felt like Russell. Timbira did this to themselves. And part of me, I said to Mike, before we did this, I was gonna say pre-season, this isn't a season. No, but I said that like Jalapal possibly could be like they were the disaster tribe, like they were losing a lot, but then they get to the merge and they run circles around Timbira, who are just like itching to work with JT, especially, who are itching to vote each other out. And like I always think about that scene because it comes up a lot in Survivor, and they're like the symbol in my mind of when like when you're like a whole tribe is talking to each other and they're all lying, but they all have to be like, yeah, no, we're voting out JT, and they're all obsessed with JT. And I feel like that happens often, but I always think about it iconically with them. So yeah, I mean, it was like a race to the bottom. Tyson and Sierra there. Yeah, there's a lot there with Timbira. I think it is also pretty iconic.
If only Sandy was on this tribe, it would be a slam dunk. I don't know what it says about me that if you had not showed me this picture of Timbira, I would have been able to tell you exactly what every single person was wearing. Like that's just how well I know this tribe. Like, and then the tribes from Survivor All Stars are like the only two I could probably do that for.
I do feel like this was the first season where either they really made it apparent or like we only talked about it, that they had them dress in a color scheme of their tribe. And I think it's because Timbira was the first and so far only black pre-merge tribe that were like, wow, they're really dressed in a lot of dark colors. That's coincidental. And it was not.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this tribe, it's a great tribe. It's an iconic tribe. How messy is it? I mean, it's messy. Whew. It's not the messiest of all time.
There's kind of like, as you said, like the villains, like two warring factions in a way. Like once you get to the merge, which takes away points. Like Coach, Debbie, and Tyson like are all fine. Exactly. And I mean, they hate Sierra.
Yeah, they hate Sierra, and then Erin's kind of by herself. Is how exactly. It feels.
Pretty much.
So,
So I think I would probably say like high no Hershey bar and then maybe slot it somewhere in my life is fine. That I think there is like this is where the narrative mess kind of weighs out, right? I think it still gets talked about as one of these first tribes of like, hey, just because you come in with the numbers doesn't mean you can clean house. Look at what happened to Timbira. Sometimes vote early, vote often is a legitimate strategy because then you're able to like get stuff out in the votes. And so I do think that it's almost like Pagong, it does earn some credit there, but I'm not sure how far that gets them.
For me, I'm putting them right now above Manu.
And below Tika.
I was going back and forth with them and Manu in that area. I think the question is, looking at the two tribes, does it help or hurt if you have players that are overall sort of decent players in a different season?
Yeah. I mean,
and they both have some of that. So I think there is some kinship there between the two.
Yeah, I don't know. I might argue to put it above Tika because this is almost again sort of opposite outcomes, and that Tika, despite all their conflict with each other, does stick through, whereas Timbira, that's the very reason they fracture apart almost immediately. And does that make it more of a hot mess tribe by comparison?
Yeah, I think maybe it does. They do come in with a 6-3 majority at the point where they're voting at the merge, and then it just goes so poorly. Again, pretty much like JT and Steven and Taj all did very, very well, but they also did a lot of that to themselves. And it has coach. We're not even talking about the fact that this is like OG coach. Like they're all sitting around listening to coach's stories. Yeah, I think we put it there.
Yeah, and I think
that's a good
I think the increasing dislike of everyone to coach and Tyson and Sierra of each other, to me, that overweighs the spats that Jam and Carolyn would have. That like at the end of the day, they still voted together. You could tell that Timbira legitimately did not like each other.
It's the fact that Tyson has to like try and coach.
No, that's next season.
through the next season. Yeah, but even then, like the legacy of not wearing feathers at your hair at tribal, like it speaks for itself. So yeah.
All right. Well, let's open up a vat of some more.
Steven in the chat says, is this ranking in terms of gameplay among hot mess tribes or just vibes? It's vibes.
It's mostly vibes.
It's a vibes only podcast.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the vibe of our next tribe and open up a big vat of Vati. So this is our green tribe from Survivor 42. And if you're asking, why are they a hot mess tribe? I'm just going to take you back to the first tribal council they went to, where there was a 4-2 majority, but because one of them couldn't vote because their idol was locked behind There Is Such Grace in the Game of Soccer It Makes Me Cry, and because another person went to Shipwhale Island and risked their vote and lost it, it forced a 2-2 tie, and they nearly went to rocks until the third member of the alliance basically was felt he was forced to vote out the fourth member of the alliance. That's Vati in a nutshell.
Yeah, now, I mean, it didn't come to mind hugely for me.
I have the same question I had about Michelle earlier. Did Lydia bring this jacket?
I don't think she borrowed that from any lawyers. I'm pretty sure she wore that on there, but it's an interesting wardrobe choice.
It's very interesting with the blue pants. I mean, you wouldn't expect anything less. I think that I don't think about 42 as having like a disaster tribe. Statistically, it's like the most even, I think, from like a challenge perspective that they all kind of, which is rare for the new era, that they all kind of like have their wins and losses. But yeah, that tribal council
they all enter starkly even because of Jackson leaving the game. They all go in 4-4 at the merge.
But the glee that I had in that episode where Chanel loses her votes, I remember thinking like the analysis was like there were so many other ways you could have played this. Like it did not need to go that way. You had to do every single thing wrong to get to the point where this is happening with the almost rock draw. And then Jenny, poor normal Jenny,
justice for
loses
Jenny.
To that. So much going on with like Daniel Strunk and Mike and the Idol. I still don't think of them as a disaster tribe, and I don't even think that I really think of them as a hot mess tribe, even though I see it now that you're saying it, but I didn't think it before.
I mean, what I would also counter is if we're also looking at pre-merge versus post-merge, we have in the Daniel Strunk Tribal Council, Chanel throwing out a spare vote just in case of a shot in the dark play without warning Mike ahead of time, which then causes this tribe to self-destruct at the merge. We don't remember this, that High ends up immediately throwing his closest ally, Lydia, under the bus.
But only out of necessity with Lydia.
Then really Chanel goes. Then Mike turns on High eventually a couple votes later. Like, if we're talking about this was not a group that, yes, they had a couple messy tribal councils, but they stuck through at the post-merge. This was definitely one of the most fractured groups in the post-merge.
The thing that's bringing it down to me is when I look at this season, this is my least memorable tribe out of the 3, which is shocking.
Oh, interesting.
I know, and I don't know why that is. I think I just remember more key moments. I mean, put it this way, everything you've mentioned, yes, I remember it. I don't know if I can name another thing that happens with this tribe.
There was quite a lot of things that we mentioned.
Yeah, but besides their first iconic vote and the situation with Hai ditching Lydia, I don't know. I don't
blame Hai for that. Like that's Murgatory is tough. Okay, they were fighting for their lives. Omen did very, very well there, but yeah, I don't think I think of them as like a hot mess tribe. I don't think like it's more of a cold mess for me. It might be Ain't No Hershey Bar. That might be that feeling.
I think this is that feeling.
Right,
I think it is. I think it's
it's distinct how that feeling feels. Right?
I know.
So now, are you putting it above or below Maramu?
I think maybe below Maramu. Now I've got to try and like pass between this feeling.
I think for me, the fact that, again, like the tiebreaker, I guess, for me is the post-merge, and the fact that V and Sean stuck together like glue in the post-merge, and what happens to Vati in the post-merge makes Vati the messier tribe for me.
And then they don't vote for Mike to win.
Yeah, and they self-destruct earlier. So, yeah.
Who does?
Yeah, I think
42,
I think the episode 3 tribal council like really lifts this up, and I think that does outweigh the Hunter blind side of a similar episode 3 wild moment.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're both saying now, and I agree.
All right. Next up, let's keep sticking with the green here. It's time we crack open our brains and talk about Luzon.
This is the one that I was comparing to with Matt saying.
This might challenge Casaya.
There's a lot of synergy here between this tribe and Matt Singh. I think you think of them in similar ways. This is the one where you think about like did they benefit in losing some of those early challenges? I think though, when you compare this one just directly with Matt Singh, this is more of a hot mess.
There's
I
so
agree.
much here. Like their name is Luzon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get another
manifested.
Luzon and Global Survivor that might be messier. And yet, here we are talking about this Luzon, truly two of the messiest tribes of all time, both Luzon. Look at how happy they are in this photo. Like, you can tell that this is
taken moments before disaster.
Before disaster. And that must have been before the game started because disaster was so immediate. They're like, yeah, we're friends, we're on Survivor. And it just goes so badly, so quickly. It was the fact that they were the brains tribe, but then like where were the brains? Tia throwing out the rice. Everything with Garrett, one of my favorite premieres, if not maybe my favorite premiere of all time. The fact that Cass and then like Spencer and Tasha hate each other through multiple seasons.
And here's what's great about that is the high placement does not reflect the relationship among the people. Spencer and Cass did not get along, but both do well, which I think boosts them hot mess wise above.
I mean, that's the
like,
thing. Matt Singh. Right.
Well, not only Matt Singh, but even like looking at it's something like Tika, right? Where yes, they lose early on. They've got some wild personalities, but all together, Jim, Carolyn, and Carson get along much better than Tasha, Spencer, and Cass do.
Yeah, I think out of all of these tribes, this is far and away the biggest roller coaster of a tribe. Of like, oh my God, they are in a downward tailspin. They're, getting rid of their athletically strongest guy because he's such a jerk, blindsiding him with an idol in his pocket. Okay, wait, they did get rid of one of their weakest challenge performers in Jatia. They seem to be unified as a 3. Okay, they swapped together, and it seems like they're in control of the tribe. Oh, wait, Cass decides to just leave them high and dry and go over to the other side, and Spencer declares openly she has a 0% chance of winning the game. Okay, they're not getting rid of each other, but they're on opposite sides. 3 of them are in the final 6. Okay, maybe they're going to be able to join back together. No, they immediately target each other again, and they place in 4 and 3.
There is one brief reprieve when they are on this combined swap
when
tribe.
They vote out Alexis.
Yeah,
when they vote out Alexis, and they've got a little bit of power and a little bit of like, okay, we're going to cool off. We're going to see what happens. We're doing okay. We're winning. This is fine. And then everything just falls apart again, which is great. But love it.
That's so fun because to get a little bit of like hope for it to like immediately torpedo in the most epic way.
Maybe this will be good.
To end. It's from literally the very, very, very beginning.
Love it.
To like from David Sampson choosing who's going to go back to the depth of Garrett, and like it implodes from the mat, but then it goes all the way to the end to the fact that they're going to be 3 of the final 6 hating each other the whole time. Obviously, Spencer and Tasha are like the key duo in this that have a relationship all the way through even another season. But even that isn't enough, I think, to counteract the chaos of this. The Brawns try to throw a challenge and they can't,
fail.
which is always a really, really fun thing. Their name is Luzon. It has everything. It ticks every single box. It's number one for me.
I think so as well. I think what it has above Mat Singh is the fact that there's so much personal conflict and hatred towards each other. What it has above Casaya is that strategically they are not unified whatsoever.
And they don't win challenges.
To me,
like
this
Casaya
is the perfect mix of what makes a hot mess tribe. It is a group of people that just do not see on the same page physically, strategically, or socially. It is the perfect lab brewed sixsome of individuals that produces the optimal TV that we experience as Survivor fans. Not to also mention, this was, Philippines have brought back the 3-tribe format, but the success of Cagayan is really going to usher in a lot of 3-tribe seasons from here on out. And I think it's due in part to how iconic Luzon is.
But it's not production manufactured. Like, they just suck that much. These are people who should never have met. They don't vote out Jatia after she throws out the rice. There's so many other issues. We're not even getting into, it's so many things. It makes me want to rewatch the season every time that I talk about it. But number one for me.
Yeah. What do you think, Mary? You agree?
I agree.
Matt Benjamin in the chat says Tasha could have been messy if this was going to be 100% the messiest possible tribe. I do agree, but I think that still Cass and Tasha messy, there's mess.
Congratulations, Luzon, you won something. There we go.
And the other thing is, when I think, one thing that's fun to think about is when you think about, pick out the most stable person from the tribe, which, depending on your view of it, could be potentially Spencer, could be Tasha on the season. And then pick out the same thing on Casaya. And I think Casaya with Suri is just, or even potentially Danielle or potentially Aris, depending on how you look at it, is just a little bit more calm.
But they won that challenge when Beauty went to.
They did. They won the bucket tossing. But even then, they failed at it. They got a whole freaking Blue Danube montage dedicated to how bad they are at it.
Yeah.
This is a special sauce right now that we are tossing in a bucket from person to person.
Cannot be recreated. It was just lightning in a bottle. So.
Well, let's move on from a Brains tribe to a Brawn tribe here. I want to talk about the Brawn tribe from Survivor, Ko Rong, To Tang. I mean, they tie the first vote of the season.
Actually, Ty wasn't on this one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was on the Beauty tribe, but this is a group that I think was largely remembered for Scott and Jason's treatment of Alicia, for Sydney eventually breaking off from the group and turning on the guys in the post-merge. But for a wild season that was Ko Rong, this was the wildest tribe. I mean, even with the conditions, this was a tribe that had a freaking bug crawling out of somebody's ear.
Do we need to mention that part again?
I do think mostly what I remember is just how mean they were to Alicia. Relentlessly mean. Is that fun? Is that hot mess? I mean, or is that just one type of thing?
Well, also, like the Brains tribe, there was this big surprise of, okay, Brains versus Brawn versus Beauty. You would imagine from a challenge perspective, the Brawns would have at least an advantage. They won one single challenge the entire time they were together.
Yeah. Tara in the chat says everyone looks so tiny with Scott, and it is true. He's kneeling and he is basically
it looks like Gandalf with the hobbits.
I mean, if you I will never get the image of Jennifer standing up on her stool out of my mind, and just how out of pocket that was for no reason. She was in a perfectly fine position going into that.
That is true.
Yeah. I think Sydney does a lot to help this tribe. Darnell probably would have had Darnell not gone home so early, but yeah, when you look at Jennifer, Scott, Jason, and Alicia, this is a disaster situation.
Yeah,
but the 10 is a little bit too mean.
So it feels less messy and more
toxic. I don't think of Scott and Jason as fun, Casaya type. Although some of that, I mean, he did say he was going to kill her.
Put this and the merge tribe of Worlds Apart as the top toxic tribes.
We should do that. That's fun.
Yeah. That's the last podcast we want to do. Sure.
On our final podcast. Let's see. Can we see where we stack up?
Yeah. So I mean, it's tough. I don't know if I'm getting the Ain't No Hershey bar feeling.
A little bit I am.
You are?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's giving Ain't No Hershey bar?
I think a little bit. I feel it. It's so distinct.
This one's hard for me because I agree with Shannon. I think it's more mean than messy, and so I don't know where to place it.
This one's hard for me because I agree with Shannon.
I would say that like all toxicity is mess, but not all mess is toxicity.
Okay. It's different type of drama. Yes.
I don't know if all toxicity is mess. I don't know that I agree.
I mean, I think to me, mess is some sort of form of chaos and disorder, which I think toxicity can
I think
bring.
There could be very ordered toxicity.
Well, not in the way that it was done here, at least.
Yeah, not here, but I'm just trying to think about the concept of what you said. I think for me, lowest of Ain't No Hershey Bar. That's where my gut that is now working again.
Yeah, and Kate in the chat is right. Like, Scott's a bully, which is not the same necessarily as being messy.
That's how I feel.
I don't know. I don't know what to do with this.
I think Ain't No Hershey Bar. That's that feeling. If you don't know, that's what that is. We have a tier for that.
I mean, I know people would want to tell Scott and Jason forget you, go home, goodbye. Would that be reflected in their ranking as well?
I don't even know anymore.
Well, but see, here's the thing, because I agree with Shannon where you say you don't know where to put this, put it in Ain't No Hershey Bar, but then look at the villains tribe. Like, how do you?
I mean, I'm looking at this tier, and I would argue maybe we move villains up to Ain't No Hershey Bar.
Yeah, you know.
And they actually did have a
what's the one after villains? What is that?
Hunapu.
Yeah. See, the problem is the forget you go home goodbye tier is the tier of should this even be? We're debating whether or not it even really is mess, and I would put this more in that tier.
That's fair.
And I like the villains tribe better.
All right. Yeah, you've convinced me. Well argued.
What's the winning argument here?
It's below villains, but I don't know whether or not villains should move up. Yeah.
Because I don't even know that I would consider it messy.
How do we feel about moving the villains up to Ain't No Hershey Bar? Because I don't think we're questioning them as a hot mess tribe in the way that we are these other groups.
Let's reassess that at the end, very end.
We've got a few left here. Let's go back to Survivor 46, and we'll talk about, at least challenge-wise, the exact opposite of Yanu. I want to bring up Nami here. And again, this is the most dominant tribe in the new era, one of the most dominant tribes in Survivor history. They have a 100% win record. I think they placed second in one challenge, but they did not
hate
like each other. They did
never have met.
Yeah. So this was a situation. It was almost like Timbira, amplified to the max to Fortissimo. Where as soon as they got the opportunity to vote each other, they did. And how? Where we go from Nami filling out the first 3 seats of the jury alone, and then the last 2 people standing were Liz and Venus. Venus being one of the furthest placing members of this tribe when she was pretty much disliked by everybody on that beach in the first half of the game.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have 2 tribes from this season, I think we did say that, compared to Siga, I think I had the meme of the 2
dragon heads,
dragon heads, and then the Siga one that was just having fun. I mean, Nami really hated each other. I do also feel like when I came back from my trip and I'd missed a month of the show, my thought process was about how every tribe was failing in their own way, sequentially. And Nami definitely had that through the middle of the game. I mean, these people, look, it took it to Twitter. It's post-show.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've ever seen so much dislike. That has to count for something.
This is one of the closest comparisons I have to the feeling of watching Gabon. They're both we got hot messes all around, but on almost all tribes in both of those seasons, and got some fun and some interesting characters, and also some of that they do not like each other.
I mean, also looking at the theme of the season, technically 3 of them go home with an idol in their pocket as well.
That feels unfair.
Yeah, and also in both cases, there's a lot of questionable gameplay, a lot of very intense gameplay, but whether or not anyone's actually doing anything that's in their best interest is questionable.
It's the fact that Tevin comes for Soda for literally no reason. It's the fact that one of the best challenge competitors of the new era can't save them from themselves. It's Liz. Liz is there.
It's Liz. It's Liz being the last, yes, Venus being the last Nami standing would be very fitting for the story, but the fact that it's Liz almost represents them even more.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that it's going to be interesting comparing it to Yanu.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. Where do you compare this with Yanu? Because I'm a little bit torn.
I think I personally think it's a tier below Yanu. I just think Yanu is, again, this perfect formula that, though I don't know, is it how much Pagong's really hanging its hat on that historical scale.
I think Pagong is getting y'all are giving Pagong a lot more credit than it is
Yeah, from the way that because it's hard because they were first and that was also first for us.
I know.
We're still working out the criteria, so
There we go.
possibly because they're not as messy, I do think we could maybe bump them down and then maybe put Nami at the end of worth playing for.
I would be fine with that because I do think, to your point, Mary, Nami is kind of a new era Fang, in that like Fang actually did, especially post-swap Fang, did really, really well in, or actually, no, they didn't do well, but like they were okay enough in the challenges that it didn't just feel like an absolute disaster. There's no way they can win anything. Nami was able to amplify that, but both I think are kind of two sides of the same coin of just groups of people that do not like each other. I mean, Fang has a moment where they're doing the golf challenge and they are bickering with each other, standing in each other's faces while they then have to sink this like 1 foot putt to win the reward challenge. And they do. That's Nami in a nutshell to me.
Yeah, I think maybe we put them above Fang because they also like Tevin and Venus have a massive fight that didn't even make the show. It was a secret scene. It was very dramatic. So there's just so much going on with Nami. Like they never liked each other from the get-go.
Yeah, I give it a lot of similarity with Fang, and I would say that it's above Pagong for me, and definitely above Ua, because still standing on that part that there are more of them that make it farther, not because they like each other, and so they get to battle it out even further into the season, which is great.
I'm putting it above Fang.
What do you think, Mary?
I could go either way. I'm happy with either side.
Make a call.
I will keep it below Fang for now. This is where the other side of the recency bias weighs out. That like I'm good keeping it right next to Fang, but right behind it at the moment. All right.
I don't agree.
Two left.
I absolutely don't agree, but okay.
We mentioned them before as well. They become a verb. Oolong. Now this is interesting because like
this is losingest.
Yeah, this is losingest.
Can't spell oolong without losing. If you were to spell,
I mean, you can, and you'd probably fail at a spelling challenge, which is probably what Oolong would do as well. I mean, this was also really interesting because I mean, look at this tribe on paper. They are the younger, as Heidi would say, they have younger, hotter bodies. You would imagine that they would dominate Karor, only for them to completely fall apart. And yes, their losing challenge record is usually what we remember them for, but there's still some like interpersonal stuff. The fact that they blindside Jolanda, who handpicked them in the first vote. Everything going on with like Jeff slipping on a coconut and breaking his ankle and asking to be voted out. The 2-2-1 tie that happens with Angie. James getting blindsided. The first ever winnowing down to one person. There's a lot of memorability baked into this hot mess.
And I think we verbed them, right?
We did verb them, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're the losingest, which again is a different criteria. I don't know if we think of them as messy, but we definitely think of them as disaster and a spectacular failing, which I still think has to be a criteria.
Yeah, I mean, for losingest, obviously they're way up there.
Hard to beat.
There is a lot of. I do think they have a hot mess quality though, because I mean, even just Bobby John turning into a caveman at the end, like what was happening? Like really, I mean, Stephanie is like the only one who kind of wasn't a hot mess.
And then she comes back and we realize like it's kind of the Bruce factor.
It's kind of the Bruce.
Like, little Bruce.
Okay,
wow, who would have thought that
normal person on that tribe, but now we see you with like other normal people and you're
it's a lesson not to, I would say Russell Swan didn't come back to back-to-back seasons, but it's a lesson not to come back to back-to-back seasons, because then you're just going to have a huge transformation from the way we initially regarded you. I
think it's just a very interesting lesson in perspective, where like one tribe's normal person is another tribe's not normal person. So yeah, I would put them really high. Can we see the list?
Yeah, let's see the list. It's starting to get a little chunky.
I think I put them above Fang. I don't want Fang to be there, so everyone's going ahead of Fang for me personally.
I mean, I feel like Fang and Nami are now sort of paired together as like a hot mess personality wise, and Oolong didn't necessarily have that. Like they're definitely iconic. Like I think that's really going to, and unlike Pagong, like. It holds up when you rewatch Galoo.
I think it's above Pagong. If we're putting Pagong up there just for the iconicness of it, then I think it's above Pagong. I don't know where the limit then
putting
ends.
It after Matt Singh. They're in a similar space.
Yeah, they're not higher than Matt Singh, but I think
under Matt Singh.
Yeah,
which is also right above.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with putting it right here. I think we just like to do the color matching as well.
Yes.
All right. So we're
Yeah,
definitely
pray
not
if
sending,
you're a purple tribe.
not sending them down the pooper like the outhouse that they built and failed to do during one of the many challenges that they lost. Last, but certainly not least, it would
Or
not
maybe
be
least, which would make them the most.
but it would not be a conversation about hot mess tribes without one to, even though we've talked about Vati and Ua and Tika, this was one that really stirred the conversation up again. Fly, my Lulus, fly.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
talk
man,
about
they're
them.
high up there. They never win. 2 of them quit.
I do believe they win one reward challenge.
Well, rewards don't count.
Yeah, I mean,
They go to
Ulong
tribal
won a
council
reward
every
challenge.
time. Think about, but it was for like Pringles, which I love Pringles.
Survivor Pringles.
Survivor
But,
Pringles.
but like, I feel like Karor was winning like a new shelter, and then they won like Pringles. But yeah, for Lulu, 2 of them quit. Sabaya, the way that went, that was crazy.
That's
Brandon.
the thing, like, the one challenge they won, they sent Caleb as an envoy, but then used that as a reason to try to target him, which then ended up in Sabaya's boot with an idol in her candle-laden pocket.
Also, in case you're curious, based on starting tribes, this tribe and the one we just talked about, Ulong, they have the lowest position. They both have the highest player come in 7th.
Well, you can't spell Lulu without, you can't spell losing without Lulu.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you need to open a dictionary.
Can't spell it this time. Yeah. So statistically low. There's Delulu. There's losing. There's the fact that 2 of them quit, and those people aren't even the way that it went with Brandon, with Sabaya, with Emily.
And the best player here, Emily, was such a roller coaster as well.
Has one of like the worst premiere episodes for anyone who wasn't voted out in Survivor history.
Yeah, which I mean makes her iconic. I mean, Caleb, everything that happened there, like Brandon. I mean, look at this tribe. Like
Caleb's a great player. Like Caleb was holding it down. To be fair,
Caleb was great.
Yeah, but then they tried to get rid of him in the 3rd episode.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think that this is, and Caleb also, like, while it is great for him to say, "Oh, I'm going to pick up Emily," like, maybe if he hadn't done that, if he had just said, "I'm rolling with whoever else they voted out that time instead," maybe it would have been a little more stable.
They wanted
throughout.
to Caleb, like they were losing, but they also turned on each other. But they're also individually chaotic, and 2 of them quit a 3rd of the tribe.
Yeah, I think that this is high up.
This is high. This is very high.
But not only
I know
that,
I say it's like baked into the new era and that should lose points, and yet it even like supersedes that.
Like
a lot of this was on them.
And I understand that editing is a thing, but when you go from a viewer perspective into the first tribal council, and half of them have been talked about as people to go, whether it's like Hannah struggling in the elements, Caleb for being considered, we should turn on them. There's a duo going on. Emily is somebody who obviously is bristling upon people from the jump. And you can even throw Brandon in there, who's really struggling in multiple ways and says, "Oh, I'm going to play my shot in the dark just in case people vote for me." It was clear from the very beginning this was a very special type of mess, and that's what the top tier is reserved for.
And I feel like it's kind of like Luzon, but not as much. But like they do get the little win of like Caleb shot in the dark hitting. I mean, it was a big win, but then like he immediately goes, and that just speaks for where we're at with this tribe.
Yeah. So the question is, how high here? Because we have even though Vati's in the 3rd tier, so we have a top 5 baby of Luzon, Casaya, Yanu, Matsing, Ulong. Shannon, does it breach the top 5 for you?
I think it's after Casaya for me. I think I put it number 1 of the new era. I think that's an iconic top 3. And I think then we can just slightly shift some stuff. But for me, it's after Casaya.
To me, it's on one side or the other of Yanu, and I don't know which side.
That's where I'm sitting as well.
Yanu gets the win in a way that Lulu Caleb maybe, but it's just not going to go that way for him.
I do think Lulu is a worse tribe. but is it okay? Refresh my memory. Yanu is the one with
Kenzie,
right, Q, and Kenzie. It's sort of is like, okay, Lulu doesn't have the post-merge members turning on each other so succinctly and argumentatively as Yanu did, but that's also because they
they self-destructed earlier. They're messier. I think they're above Yanu. Yeah,
that's because for most of the merge, the only Lulu there was Emily,
and it's not just because they're so losing. Like there was no need for Sean to quit.
Yeah,
He
like
just
Sean quit
did.
on a whim. He let the intrusive voices win. And like even Emily, like she's ends up obviously being a great player, but like from where we started, her calling up Bruce on the mat, like no one asked for her to do that. So
Yeah.
I think, can we move Pagong down? Because now looking
All right,
at
so
it,
yeah,
I think
now we
Pagong
can,
needs to move down into the following
let's start
tier.
analyzing here. Let's make Pagong the kings and queens of My Life is Pime, putting them above Uwa. I would still argue moving the villains up to the bottom of Ain't No Hershey Bar. Because I think the messiness of the villains we remember. Yes, I think from a big picture side of things, it's definitely pales in comparison. But like, I feel like Forget You, Go Home, Goodbye, to your point, Mary, should be questioning, okay, there's not a lot of mess that I remember until you really squint and take a look. You remember how messy the villains tribe was and how much they didn't like each other at points.
Mary doesn't want to do it.
Well, no, this is not a hill I'm deciding to die on. I could go either way with that because I think the one
But I
problem
didn't
that I
get the
have with
feeling.
the problem I have with villains is I feel like if you want to move it up and put it in a Hershey bar, you need to put the heroes tribe on here, and they also need to be in that same spot. Like I think that the heroes
Well,
tribe.
that's the whole-
You're saying I'll do it under the condition that I add a 21st tribe?
Well, I think my problem is that I just think that the whole season has a lot of mess and a lot of issues. A lot of the things that are messy about the villains tribe are instigated by the heroes tribe.
I'm breaking the tie. I didn't get the feeling, and it's all about the Ain't No Hershey Bar feeling. It's just very distinct, so I'm gonna keep it down and Forget You, Go Home, Goodbye if I'm breaking this tie. And I think otherwise, like it looks pretty good. Like for Fang, I know in the chat they're saying Gabon and Fang is mess, and I said Gabon, the messiest season. For me, Fang in itself, this iteration isn't as memorable as a group because there are swaps and it's like also messy throughout. That's the only reason that I was lower on it. But yes, like super messy. The entire season is like the messiest season. I'm not saying that's not true. But yeah, I think we've done incredibly well.
All right, so let me just read out the list in order from bottom to top here, starting from, in our opinion, the least hot mess, the coldest mess tribe is Ravu, the have-nots from Fiji. Then we move up to Tadhana, the loved ones tribe from Blood versus Water. We have Hunapu, the original Drew Christie Flint-losing tribe from San Juan del Sur. Tang, the Brawn tribe from Ko Rong, not Cho Chang. There we have the Villains tribe, perhaps controversially, from Survivor Heroes versus Villains. Moving up a tier, Ain't No Hershey Bar, only a gruesome twosome occupying this slot. We have Maramu from Marquesas and Vati from Survivor 42. Moving up to My Life is Fine, starting from the bottom there, we have both Manu and Lesu, because it's basically the same group, from Edge of Extinction. Tika from Survivor 44. Timbira from Tocantins. Ua from Survivor 41. And one of the OG tribes, Pagong from Borneo. And finally, in our top tier, worth playing for from the bottom up, Nami from Survivor 46. Fang from Gabon, Ulong from Palau, Mat Singh, a similar blue losing tribe from Philippines, Yanu from 46, followed by Lulu from 45. And our top two are Casaya and in first place, the Brain/Crap for Brains tribe in Luzon.
It's good. It's a very, very good list. The criteria was hard. It did break my brain, but now that we're here, I think we defined it, and I think it makes so much sense. And I'm just looking forward to 47's production-built disaster hot mess tribe that they create for us. So this was fun. We did it. I'm so proud of us.
Mary, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling great about it. And just one more stat, which is actually probably not that interesting when you think about the fact that most seasons had two tribes, but 9 of these tribes had a winner. So
hey, that's nearly a 50% success rate.
Yeah, of the hot messiest tribes, and a lot of them also had second or third place players. So I think
I love the stats.
Yeah, this is fun. It was great. I'm
glad
really
we did
enjoyed
this.
Yes,
Yeah.
I liked it, and I think we really broke down the difference between a losing tribe, a toxic tribe, and a messy tribe.
So I love how you paused after you said, "I think we really broke down."
And the debates have already started, because I have already received a response from one Shane Powers tweeting me, Luzon wasn't a tribe, they were a group of individuals. Casaya bonded together as a community. I believe, let me bring it up on screen. I believe
oh my gosh.
the only tribe to not flip on itself post-merge, even with all the insanity and crazy, we were dominant and held our singleness.
Oh my God.
Your list is wrong.
No, we're not getting caught up by Shea Powers on the podcast.
Now
Wait,
it truly feels like a
firstly-
rite of passage has occurred for podcasters.
Okay, wait. Firstly, Shea Powers. I hate to disagree, and I'm not going into this, but like the fact that you bonded together is to a detriment in this list that we're ranking. That's a positive thing, which makes it negative in the list. In saying that, and the fact that Shane is calling us out, I am terrified, and that might move Casaya up because that is messy.
Well,
it's
I think
on the podcast. What
Shannon,
Shane,
the
what the hell?
but Shannon,
Point is
depends.
the
How's the quality of
reason-
your apartment?
Shane's point is a reason why Luzon is messier. However, when you were reading all of that, I'm sitting here going, wait. I was thinking Shane was Randy for a second, and I was like, he's not on either of those tribes. Why does he care?
Have my address, right? Oh my god, we just got
Oh,
caught up by Shea Powers
so
on the
good.
podcast.
I
Because
love
anyone
Shane.
like Big Brother has started, and we just have to sit with the fact that this is happening, and then we're just gonna go back to our lives.
I mean, is this not the hottest, messiest way to end a hot mess tribe tier list on Summer of Survivor?
this is insane. This is what? Why is
I
Shane
love it.
watching?
Thank you, Shane, for watching. Of course, I'm sure
Oh
people
my
will have
God,
opinions
he's on
about
Twitter.
where these things lie. Of course, let your thoughts be known. We know that ranking is arbitrary and reductive, but happy to go through the exercise tonight with you all. Let's go around the horn and plug not our home addresses, but perhaps other things that we're working on. Mary, what are you doing?
What am I doing? Oh, I actually do. I have something that, that is
Okay.
going on. All right. Besides like the typical Big Brother 26 nonsense that's going on, I am actually due to some people asking about it. First off, yes, we will be very briefly covering Love is Blind UK. Don't worry about it.
Yay.
We will have an episode about that coming out sometime soonish. The other thing I'm doing is over on Kowski Cast. Keep your feed ready because in the next couple days we will be doing a brief and quick and dirty Umbrella Academy rewatch in order to get up to date on season 4. So haven't seen season 4 yet, but we will be covering one episode per season. It'll be happening over there.
All right. I love to get your feed ready. That's
I don't know. I
a
was
great
like trying
way to prep people.
What does that mean? I don't know.
Open your gullet and swallow some podcasts.
Yes.
Shannon-
Shannon's been tweeting for ages though, because he quote tweeted as well. He said, "I may come into this live for this. If Casaya isn't one, this entire list is bogus garbage." That was 2 hours ago. Then he said, "How do I zoom in on this live? These dudes have it wrong, and I want to state my case." Unfortunately, we did not have time for either Shane or anyone from the chat to come on because of Big Brother, the hot messiest of the shows.
Yeah, you
If
should
we were
definitely
gonna-
respond to that, Shannon, by saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, sorry, it's Big Brother."
It's Big Brother time. Unfortunately, we also had people from the chat we wanted to bring in. Shane, we can't have time for everything, so. Oh my God, Shane's watching this. No, it's not hypothetical. I'm so sorry, Shane Powers. I want the podcast to end, and I'm pretty sure Sam is telling us we've got to go. Plug and get out. Yep, I hear you. Summer of Survivor. That's me, and we'll have more stuff after that. That will be fun. We'll plug it next week. Goodbye. Bye, Shane. I'm sorry. I love Casaya.
I love Casaya too.
We love Casaya. It was a tough thing. We had to choose between our children in this case, our hottest, messiest children. I mean, the thing that I will plug is next week what we're doing on Summer of Survivor, which is, in case you don't know, the top 50 of the Survivor 50 wish list has been released, and we have one more round of voting. So Rob has a website.com/vote50. Do what you did the first round. Vote for the 20 people you want to see on Survivor 50.
Vote
and
for Shane Powers.
Vote for Shane Powers. There we go.
You know that despite the hat, I did not vote for Boston Rob. I did vote for Shane Powers.
There we go. So be sure to put your votes in. Voting is done at 12 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. And then this time next week, Rob will be back in-house as the three of us will break down the results and reveal the top 20 vote getters, a.k.a. the fan-voted cast of Survivor 50. Outside of that, other thing I'll plug is that The Anonymous is a new social strategy show airing on USA Network. It aired on a bunch of other networks as well. I think it's coming to Peacock on Monday. Check out the first 3 episodes. It's a really fun show. Puya and I got together to talk through our thoughts on the first 3 episodes, what we liked, what we're looking forward to. And if you want to check out more coverage of that after watching the show, be sure to let us know. And let us know your thought about this tier list as well. This was such a great time. Thanks to everybody for hanging out in the chat. Thanks to Shane for peeping in as well. I'm excited to see what's to come next week as we reveal the voting of the Survivor 50 wish list next week with Rob. Don't miss it, 6 p.m. Eastern, live, same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you all so much for listening. Mary, Shannon, thank you both so much for your fantastic work. Until next time, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.